Chapter 11:12. The female doctor was already extremely frightened when she was kidnapped. When she saw Han Yunxi, she was so frightened that she almost handed her over. Han Yunxi was also very surprised to see Medical City. Wasn't this the fourth young miss of the Ren family in Medical City? Bai Yanqing's men had actually kidnapped fourth young Miss Ren. Wasn't this too much of a coincidence? Fourth young Miss Ren had very high attainments in obstetrics. During the medical conference back then, Gu Beiwei had personally picked her to be his assistant. First, he liked her medical skills, and second, because of her background. The Ren family was a major power in Medical City. Since Gu Beiwei had helped fourth young Miss Ren, the Ren family would naturally stand on Gu Beiwei's side. Seeing fourth young Miss Ren's shocked expression, Han Yunxi hurriedly gave her a look. Fourth young Miss Ren looked confused. Who knew that Bai Yanqing would suddenly shout, "Men, go! Get that prescription back! Quick!" What was going on? Could it be that Bai Yanqing realized that the secret of the prescription would be leaked? But he had already checked the prescription, hadn't he? Su Xiaoyu and Ning Jing looked at each other, not daring to move. Han Yunxi was still calm. She was still lying on the bed, maintaining a look of despair. Fourth young Miss Ren was terrified and at a loss. She had just taken care of a pregnant woman in the obstetrics department. After tidying herself up, she was about to go home when she was suddenly kidnapped. The kidnappers were dressed in black and had covered her eyes the entire way. She didn't even know who she had offended and why they wanted to kidnap her. However, she understood everything as soon as she saw Ning Jing. The kidnapping of Ning Jing and Su Xiaoyu had never been made public. Only the young master knew about it. As for Han Yunxi's kidnapping, very few people knew about it. She originally didn't know anything. It was only when Dean Beiwei wrote her a letter 3 months ago, asking her to help search for him, that she realized the severity of the situation. Dean Beiwei wanted her to instruct all the obstetricians to pay attention to every patient and prescription. If there were any abnormalities, they were not to expose them on the spot. They were to report them immediately. Due to the incident with Gu, Dean Beiwei had personally established a complete and strict obstetric system as soon as he took over the position of dean. On the one hand, the doctor's right to examine and treat pregnant women was abolished, and professional obstetrics and gynecology clinics were established. There were very strict prescriptions for medication. Unless it was a professional obstetrician, no doctor was allowed to prescribe medication to pregnant women. On the other hand, they had joined forces with Medicine City and issued a strict ban on the sale of medicine. Without a prescription from an obstetrician or a prescription that had been reviewed, no pharmacy was allowed to sell medicine to pregnant women. Although this method couldn't stop a psychopath like Guiyun Tian, it could, to a certain extent, prevent medication mistakes and medical accidents. This was what Gu Beiwei had learned from the incident with Gu. It was also the first major thing he did after taking over Medical City. Apart from setting up professional obstetrics and gynecology clinics, Gu Beiwei had fourth young Miss Ren take charge. On one hand, they used the Medical Academy's obstetrics and gynecology classes as a base to expand the number of obstetricians. On the other hand, they organized the experienced old doctors to study the safety of medication for pregnant women. The old doctors went to study the safety of medication, so fourth young Miss Ren was naturally in charge of everything in the obstetrics department. Coupled with the fact that she had the support of the Ren family behind her, she had become the true leader of the obstetrics department in the past 2 years. All the obstetrics clinics were under her control. It was a piece of cake for her to pass on Dean Beiwei's secret orders. The reason why Dean Beiwei wanted her to instruct the various obstetricians to pay attention to patients and prescriptions was precisely because Han Yunxi was pregnant. Of course, she didn't tell anyone about this secret. After all, even Long Fei Yi didn't know about this secret. Who knew if Long Fei Yi would lose his mind if he found out? Dean Beiwei had said that this wasn't an absolute clue. It was just a precaution. By now, the princess would definitely know she was pregnant. With the princess's body, it was unavoidable for her to take medication in the second trimester. Bai Yanqing was only a poisons master, not a poisons doctor. He didn't have anyone who knew obstetrics by his side either. If the princess needed medication, it was very likely that she would tamper with the prescriptions. Fourth young Miss Run had been waiting the entire time, waiting for the clinic below to report the suspicious prescriptions, but she never thought she would be kidnapped and see the princess with her own eyes. How could she not be surprised? How could she not be shocked? Right now, her mind was completely blank. The guard were confused, but they immediately chased after the prescriptions that had been sent out. Bai Yanqing walked towards fourth young Miss Rin step by step, studying her coldly. "Where did you kidnap her from?" Bai Yanqing asked. "She was in the obstetrics department of the medical academy." "It's already so late, but she was the only one I saw," the guard replied honestly. Bai Yanqing sneered. "Fourth young Miss Ren." The more he looked at this female doctor, the more familiar he found her. He recalled her after some thought. This female doctor was the one that Gu Beiwei had called out during the medical skills competition. She was the daughter of the Ren family, one of Gu Beiwei's subordinates, and a famous doctor. Now that she was missing, Medical City would probably be in an uproar. However, it didn't matter. He was absolutely certain that no one would be able to find this place. However, once fourth young Miss Ren's handwriting was leaked, there was a chance that someone would recognize it. Similarly, Su Xiaoyu's handwriting would also be recognized. Long Fei Yi and the rest had set up an inescapable trap. During these 3 months, he wouldn't have left the underground palace unless he had no other choice. In his panic earlier, he only checked the prescriptions, but didn't notice the problem with the handwriting. Only after recognizing fourth young Miss Ren did he remember this detail. Fourth young Miss Ren turned around and looked at Bai Yanqing. "You, what exactly do you want?" "The princess of Western Qin had a miscarriage after taking poison. The poison has been neutralized. Dr. Ren, please take a good look at her condition. After all, it's a matter of life and death." Bai Yanqing said politely. "Bai Yanqing, what do you mean by getting the prescriptions back? If the medicine doesn't arrive soon, we won't be able to keep the baby," Su Xiaoyu said anxiously. "Someone gag their mouths for old man," Bai Yanqing said coldly. Undoubtedly, he wanted to hear fourth young Miss Ren's diagnosis and see if it was the same as Su Xiaoyu's. Su Xiaoyu and Ning Jing's mouths were gagged. Fourth young Miss Ren had a complicated look in her eyes. She looked at Su Xiaoyu and Ning Jing and asked in astonishment, "Miscarriage? The princess is pregnant?" Fourth young Miss Ren was chosen by Gu Beiwei and entrusted with the important task of imparting medical skills to her. On one hand, she was talented. On the other hand, she was smart and meticulous. Although she was so scared that her legs turned to jelly, she still held on. Based on the current situation, Bai Yanqing would definitely not let her go. If they wanted to get help, they would have to rely on the prescriptions. Based on Bai Yanqing's attitude, if they wanted to give him the prescriptions, they would have to first dispel his doubts, and second, they would have to explain the princess's condition to him. Bai Yanqing had already speculated that Long Fei Yi didn't know about Han Yunqi's pregnancy. After hearing fourth young Miss Ren's words, he believed it even more. He didn't say anything. Fourth young Miss Ren hurried forward to take Han Yunqi's pulse. With Bai Yanqing standing at the side, Han Yunqi couldn't give fourth young Miss Ren any meaningful glances. She looked at the ceiling in despair, but her heart was in turmoil. Fourth young Miss Ren was one of the people Gu Beiwei liked. She really hoped that Gu Beiwei didn't misjudge her. Fourth young Miss Ren had to be smart and quick-witted. Fourth young Miss Ren's medical skills were much better than Su Xiaoyu's. Soon, she figured out Han Yunqi's condition. Although it was a miscarriage, it wasn't serious. If she guessed correctly, Han Yunqi's bleeding wasn't caused by a miscarriage, but an illusion. In other words, Han Yunqi had lied to Bai Yanqing. Why would Han Yunqi risk her unborn child to deceive Bai Yanqing? Fourth young Miss Ren more or less understood what was going on when she recalled that Bai Yanqing had just taken back Su Xiaoyu's prescription. She let go of Han Yunqi's hand and said anxiously, "You have to take the medicine quickly. The sooner the better. Your Highness, you have a hold on no matter what. The child is innocent. You have to hold on." Her reaction was similar to Su Xiaoyu's. Bai Yanqing's doubts were dispelled. Fourth young Miss Ren suddenly knelt down. "Old senior, please save the child. The child is innocent. The grudge between you and the princess is an adult matter. The child hasn't even spoken yet. He's too innocent. Someone, bring her a brush and ink." Bai Yanqing personally helped fourth young Miss Ren up and said hypocritically, "Don't worry. As long as you save the child, old man will definitely let you go." Fourth young Miss Ren's hands, which were hidden in her wide sleeves, were trembling. However, she persevered and nodded repeatedly. "Hurry up and bring me the medicine. I'll be able to save the child." The attendant brought over a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone, and fourth young Miss Ren started writing anxiously. Su Xiaoyu and Ning Jing watched in a daze. They didn't expect this crying nurse to cooperate with them so seamlessly. Han Yunxi was still staring at the ceiling as if it had nothing to do with her, even if the sky collapsed. However, she was already relieved. She didn't know whether she should thank Gu Beiyue or fourth young Miss Ren. Was she considered one of the guardians of the Shadow Clan? After fourth young Miss Ren finished writing the prescription, Bai Yanqing looked through it and found that there were only 2 or 3 ingredients missing from Su Xiaoyu's prescription. "Someone, make a copy and bring it over immediately," Bai Yanqing ordered. This time, Han Yunxi almost laughed out loud. She originally thought that this prescription would be difficult to send out, or that Bai Yanqing would personally look for the medicine instead of going to the pharmacy to get it. However, after hearing what he said, Han Yunxi realized that she had misunderstood. Bai Yanqing was only worried about the handwriting. This old fellow was really meticulous. No matter what, as long as the prescription could be sent to the pharmacy to get it, there was hope that they could spread the news. With fourth young Miss Ren around, there would be one more person to think of a solution. After fourth young Miss Ren's prescription was copied, it was immediately sent to get the medicine. "You must be quick. Be quick." Fourth young Miss Ren emphasized as she said to Bai Yanqing, "Senior, I have to give the princess first aid treatment. If the medicine doesn't arrive in time, she can still be saved for a while." Seeing fourth young Miss Ren's serious expression, not to mention Bai Yanqing, even Ning Jing and Su Xiaoyu almost believed her. Bai Yanqing agreed. Fourth young Miss Ren said, "Get a maidservant here. I need someone to help me." Bai Yanqing didn't have a maidservant by his side. He hesitated for a moment and said coldly, "Ning Jing, stay here. Take Su Xiaoyu away." Although Su Xiaoyu was younger than Ning Jing by 10 years, Bai Yanqing was even more worried about Su Xiaoyu. Su Xiaoyu's temper was very similar to Bai Yuqiao's, but she was smarter than Bai Yuqiao. Naturally, Bai Yanqing had to stay out of the way. Bai Yanqing and Su Xiaoyu went out together. Su Xiaoyu gloomily stared at Bai Yanqing the whole way. She had already sworn countless times in her heart that if Bai Yanqing fell into her hands, she would definitely serve him well. Chapter 11:13. As soon as the stone door closed, Han Yunxi immediately turned back, but fourth young Miss Ren fell to the ground, her legs weak. It was too frightening. She'd gone through countless life-or-death situations, but none of them had been as dangerous as this. Han Yunxi smiled. She recalled how she'd reacted the same way the first time she'd rescued a poison patient during her internship at the medical academy. A doctor's calmness had been cultivated through countless life-or-death situations. Women who studied medicine, especially those who were experienced and accomplished in their studies, couldn't be lacking. Ning Jing hurried over to support fourth young Miss Ren and whispered, "Good job, don't be afraid." Fourth young Miss Ren relaxed a little with someone holding her hand. She hurried over to Han Yunxi. "Princess, His Highness the Crown Prince, and Academy Head Beiyue are looking for you everywhere." Fourth young Miss Ren almost revealed that Academy Head Beiyue knew about the princess's pregnancy, but she stopped herself in time. Fourth young Miss Ren didn't know why Academy Head Beiyue was hiding this. She only knew that if His Highness the Crown Prince found out, Academy Head Beiyue would be in big trouble. "Is Long Fei Yi doing well?" Han Yunxi asked hastily. "I heard that His Highness the Crown Prince has been in the army recently, killing enemies on his own. East Qin's army only needed 3 months to subdue the rebels in the central and southern regions and beat back Western Zhou's army. Now, aside from Northern Li, the rest of the world is at peace," fourth young Miss Ren replied seriously. Han Yunxi was asking about Long Fei Yi, but fourth young Miss Ren was asking about the rest of the world. But wasn't Long Fei Yi the rest of the world? If Long Fei Yi wasn't doing well, How could the rest of the world be doing well? Han Yunqi's lips curled into a helpless smile. She thought she must have lost her mind from being locked up. How could fourth young Miss Ren know about Long Fei Ye's exact situation? It was pointless for her to ask. 3 months ago, many Shadow Guard and Poison Guards came to Medical City, as well as a group of Celestial Mountain experts. They're still hiding in the Poison Sect, probably looking for you, fourth young Miss Ren continued. Fourth young Miss Ren, it was all thanks to you just now. Han Yunqi changed the topic. After all, what she heard from others was not as good as what she saw with her own eyes. She really wanted to see Long Fei Yi. She really wanted to know what he was doing now. She really wanted to hold his hand, interlock their fingers, lean on his shoulder, and talk to him. Some people were destined not to be missed. Once they were missed, they would feel like crying. They had to be by their side forever to feel at ease. Han Yunqi didn't want to cry when she was pregnant, and she didn't like to cry. Princess, I've already sent the news out. Don't worry, Dean Beiwei will receive the news very soon. They'll come to Medical City soon. Fourth young Miss Ren lowered her voice. Han Yunqi and Ning Jing were both very surprised. Han Yunqi knew that as soon as the prescription was sent to the pharmacy, it would be transferred to the obstetrics clinic for examination. All the obstetrics doctors in Cloud Rail Continent were arranged by fourth young Miss Ren, but there were only 2 obstetrics clinics in Medical City. One was in the Medical Academy, and the other was a maternity clinic attached to the Medical Academy. Not just anyone could enter the Medical Academy, so the prescription would definitely be sent to the maternity clinic. The people there were all fourth young Miss Ren's subordinates. But Han Yunqi couldn't figure out what fourth young Miss Ren had written to avoid by Yanqing's eyes and send the news out. What did you write in the prescription? Han Yunqi asked in astonishment. Fourth young Miss Ren had Ning Jing lean over and tell them in a low voice. Han Yunqi and Ning Jing were full of admiration and hope at the same time. As long as the prescription was sent to the pharmacy, Gu Beiwei would at least be able to confirm that they were in Medical City. As long as the area was confirmed, it would be much easier to find them. Moreover, as long as they recognized the first prescription, they would pay extra attention to the rest. Who knew if they'd have a chance to talk alone after this? But Han Yunqi quickly told fourth young Miss Ren the exact address. Bai Yanqing wouldn't let Su Xiaoyu write any more prescriptions, so the heavy responsibility fell on fourth young Miss Ren's shoulders. After making the best use of the time to explain everything, Han Yunqi asked fourth young Miss Ren to do a detailed checkup on her to ensure that the baby in her belly was fine. Fourth young Miss Ren immediately became nervous again, her hands trembling. It's fine. Don't worry, Bai Yanqing won't come in. Han Yunqi comforted her in a low voice. Your Highness, this. Fourth young Miss Ren smiled helplessly and bitterly. This is the Crown Prince's child, the common bloodline of both the Eastern and Western Qin imperial families. I'm not afraid. I'm just nervous. Hearing this, Han Yunqi and Ning Jing fell silent. This child's identity was too noble, so fourth Miss Ren was nervous. However, for them, the words, the common bloodline of the 2 royal families of East and West Qin, were full of too much bitterness, difficulty, and helplessness that could not be explained. Han Yunqi gently stroked her slightly bulging belly and couldn't help but ask, I wonder if it's a boy or a girl. Your Highness, let's have Academy head Beiwei take your pulse later. He might know, fourth young Miss Ren said quickly. How would he know? Han Yunqi said helplessly. There's a saying in obstetrics that the pulse can tell the gender, but I've never seen it before. Academy head Beiwei's medical skills are so amazing. He might be able to diagnose it. Fourth young Miss Ren smiled. Then we'll have to find him secretly. We can't let anyone know. Han Yunqi also smiled. For the past 3 months, they've been locked up in a small dark room with no one to talk to. They didn't even dare to look at the baby. This joy could only be shared today, and it could only be discussed today. No matter how strong a person was, they would be terrified after being pregnant. What could be more nerve-wracking than giving birth to a new life? Although they could only talk for a while, Han Yunqi was in a much better mood. She said, whether it's a boy or a girl, Long Fei you will like it. Ning Jing's mind wandered. She thought, Tangley must also love little Tang Tang very much. That's their only child in this lifetime. After a serious examination, fourth young Miss Ren gave Han Yunshi a reassuring diagnosis. She said, "Your Highness, she'll be fine as long as she stays in bed before the medicine arrives." Okay. Han Yunshi nodded seriously. Fourth young Miss Ren and Ning Jing didn't dare to delay for too long. Fourth young Miss Ren took out the needle box from Han Yunshi's medical bag and pretended to put away the needles. Ning Jing went to knock on the door. Bai Yanqing came in personally and looked around. When he saw that Han Yunshi was still staring at the ceiling expressionlessly, he said harshly, "Girl, your child's life is worth several people's lives. Don't let the child bear a life debt before it's even born. It won't be able to reincarnate." Han Yunshi turned around and glared at him. Bai Yanqing was very satisfied and left with a big laugh. Bai Yanqing left fourth young Miss Ren behind and separated Ning Jing and Su Xiaoyu into 2 separate rooms. Bai Yanqing was waiting for these few months to pass. Han Yunshi and the others were also waiting for the attendants to deliver the medicine. Fourth young Miss Ren's prescription was only in Medical City, so it wasn't easy to find in the wild. The poison sect had taken over most of Medical City's grasslands and forests, so the medicinal herbs were all poisonous. Thus, the attendants had to go to the medicine hall if they wanted to get the medicine as quickly as possible. Once the medicine arrived, it meant that the prescription had been checked by a gynecologist. The wait was forever long. Han Yunshi hesitated, then had fourth young Miss Ren rush the attendant. If the attendant took the prescription to the medicine hall and learned that it had to be checked by a gynecologist, would he come back to ask for Bai Yanqing's opinion? If that was the case, they would be in even more danger. "Tell him that my condition has changed and I need to take the medicine as soon as possible," Han Yunshi said softly. Fourth young Miss Ren took a deep breath and quickly knocked on the door. The one who opened the door wasn't Bai Yanqing, but a guard. Fourth young Miss Ren looked anxious. "I want to see Senior Bai." Hao Sen happened to pass by at this moment. He'd already brought back Su Xiaoyu's prescription and was heading over from Bai Yanqing's place. "What do you want?" Hao Sen asked irritably. "Why haven't the medicine I prescribed arrived yet? Please tell Senior Bai that the princess's condition has worsened and she needs to take the medicine as soon as possible. Can you hurry the person in charge?" Fourth young Miss Ren asked seriously. "What's the rush? Just wait." Hao Sen said unhappily. "Princess, there's no rush, but we don't want to die. If we can't keep the child." Fourth young Miss Ren started to sob. "Lock her up," Hao Sen impatiently ordered. Despite his impatience, Hao Sen didn't ask for Bai Yanqing's permission after the door was closed. He hurriedly ordered the guards to hurry the person in charge. "No matter what, bring the medicine back as soon as possible. If we anger Master, we'll all suffer." Hao Sen thought that since Master had personally inspected the prescription and ordered someone to make a copy, there shouldn't be any more problems. What he didn't know was that it was precisely because he sent someone to hurry the person in charge that the attendant, who was originally hesitating whether or not to take the prescription to the obstetrics clinic, no longer hesitated and directly sent the prescription to the obstetrics clinic. Before long, fourth young Miss Ren was called out of the secret room and brought to another stone room. When she saw the table full of medicinal ingredients, she almost cried out. Of course, she held it in very well. She knew that the prescription must be on its way to Dean Beiwei. At this moment, Gu Beiwei was no longer in the Tian and Imperial capital. He was at the entrance of the medicine requesting cave. Gu, who he hadn't seen for a long time, was standing next to him. Tang Li was also there. Gu had received a secret letter from Old Man of Alchemy, saying that Immerse's treasured sword had basically been forged. It was just waiting for the swordsman to personally sharpen it. Sharpening was to grind away the impurities on the blade and reveal its sharpness. If the swordsman personally sharpened the blade, the person and the sword would have a better rapport. Moreover, a treasured sword forged from the earthly fire Kuan furnace was no ordinary sword. With the Old Man of Alchemy and Yi Zhao's strength, it was impossible for them to sharpen it. As soon as Gu received the news, he told Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiwei. Gu Beiwei told Tang Li. Gu Beiwei was a benevolent person. He knew that Tang Li had already been searching for His Highness for 3 whole months. Using this opportunity, Tang Li should be able to see His Highness. Long Fei, you will not come, right? Gu questioned angrily. During this time, He had been running all over the world like a madman. His temper was especially irritable. He didn't even know how long it had been since he last smiled. He will. My brother will definitely come. Tang Li was very sure. He believed that his brother wasn't someone who would back down, let alone someone who was weak. In these 3 months, although he hadn't said a word, he had never stopped sending secret letters to the Shadow Guard. He had always been arranging for the Shadow Guard to find his sister-in-law's whereabouts. He had also been going to the battlefield alone. He was strong. How could he back down? Sure enough, the sound of hooves could be heard. Long Fei Yi galloped over on his horse. He was dressed in black, and his face was thin and cold. His entire person was silent and cold. Chapter 11:14. He finally saw Long Fei Yi. Before Long Fei Yi even reached the medicine-requesting cave, Tang Li had already dashed over. He stood in the medicinal field, waving and shouting, "Brother! Over here! Over here!" Tang Li was extremely excited. Helpless, Long Fei Yi directly rode past him on his horse, leaving him covered in dust. Gu Beiwei stood beside the medicine-requesting cave. Gu purposely blocked the entrance of the cave with his arms crossed in front of his chest. Long Fei Yi dismounted from his horse. He didn't say anything and directly reached out to push him. Gu pressed down on his hand. Long Fei Yi waved his hand and directly pushed Gu to the side. He strode into the cave. Gu and Gu Beiwei looked at each other. They didn't say anything and hurriedly followed in. Tang Li was the last to enter the palace. He chased after them without letting go. The mechanism of the medicine-requesting cave had long been shut down by the old man of alchemy. They quickly arrived at the elixir-refining cave. Long Fei Yi stood there expressionlessly. The others were shocked by the scene in the cave. There were only 3 people in the elixir-refining cave. The old man of alchemy, Yi Xiao, and the lady boss. The lady boss sat quietly at the side. She hung her bones as if she was immersed in her own world. Everything around her had nothing to do with her. The old man of alchemy and Yi Xiao stood at the top of the celestial fire furnace. Both of them were shirtless and sweating profusely. Their faces were bright red from the reflection of the fire in the furnace. The old man of alchemy had really put in a lot of effort. He had actually emptied all the medicinal pills in the celestial fire furnace. He had opened up all the compartments in the furnace and used qi to turn into fire to forge a treasured sword. Through the small window of the celestial fire furnace, one could vaguely see a treasured sword hanging in the blazing fire in the furnace. It seemed to be waiting for its master's call. Looking at the blazing celestial fire furnace, everyone couldn't help but feel reverence. This was a divine weapon after all. Only a divine weapon could reforge a peerless treasured sword in such a short time. It could bear the ancient power of Mo Xie's sword spirit. No wonder the old man of alchemy and Yi Xiao had to wait for Long Fei Yi and the others to forge the sword. From the looks of it, the two didn't even have the power to summon the treasured sword. When they saw that Long Fei Yi and the others had arrived, they were both Yi and the celestial fire. Although it was regretful that they didn't see Han Yunxi with them, at least the two of them had exhausted all their strength to finish forging the sword before the dual cultivation deadline. Once the treasured sword was forged, the dual cultivation would have a higher chance of success, wouldn't it? Once the treasured sword was forged, Long Fei Yi could wholeheartedly search for Han Yunxi, wouldn't it? The old man of alchemy looked at Gu for a moment, as if he wanted to say something to him. However, he didn't say anything in the end. When Gu wrote a letter asking him to use the celestial fire furnace to forge the sword, he immediately agreed. This child still hadn't admitted that he was the little madman from back then, so he didn't insist. As long as he knew that the little madman from back then was him, as long as he could see him occasionally, as long as he knew that he was doing well, it was enough. Young people, come together. Let's work together to summon the treasured sword. The old man of alchemy said loudly. Gu was the first to step forward, but Long Fei Yi raised his hand to stop him. Gu frowned and looked at Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi ignored him and looked at the celestial fire furnace coldly. Then, he suddenly flew up into the air. Gu wanted to go, but Gu Beiwei stopped him, Let his highness go by himself. That's the sword he wants to give to the princess." The old man of alchemy and Yi Xiao saw Long Fei Yi stop Gu. Seeing that he didn't say a word and came over aggressively, the two of them tactfully moved aside. This fellow wanted to summon the treasured sword with his own strength? He was really arrogant. However, with his powerful dual internal energy, he did have the qualifications to be arrogant. He could even take the Ganjiang treasured sword. So how could he summon this newly forged treasured sword? Although this newly forged treasured sword was stronger than countless treasured swords in the world, it was still not stronger than the king of 10,000 swords, Ganjiang. After the old man of alchemy and Yi Xiao retreated, Long Fei Yi stood alone on the towering celestial fire furnace. His expression was cold, and his eyes were cold. His eyes were lowered. He was clearly looking at the sword in the furnace, but he gave people the feeling that he was above the 9 heavens, looking down on the world with cold eyes. That thin voice sounded especially cold and lonely under the illumination of the fire. Han Yunqi wasn't here. What else could his eyes hold? He stood at the edge of the huge furnace with his eyes lowered. His face was expressionless. He had one hand behind his back and the other raised, palm facing down. What others thought was difficult was as easy as flipping his hand for him. He grabbed at the air with one hand, and a series of clang, clang, clang sounds came from the celestial fire furnace. The treasured sword was trembling and rising up in the raging fire. Seeing this scene, even Gu Beiwei was convinced, let alone Gu. However, Tang Li didn't see Long Fei Yi's strength. He saw Long Fei Yi's silence and loneliness. In these 3 months, he had been looking for Long Fei Yi. Today, he finally saw him, but he would rather never see him today. Too similar. No, it couldn't be said that they were similar because it was even more than that. The current Long Fei Yi was so similar to the Long Fei Yi who had been silent for a year. Apart from the similarities, there was a man's loneliness and an indescribable sorrow. As powerful as he was, he couldn't protect the person he loved the most. Wasn't this a kind of sorrow for him? Just as Tang Li was distracted, there was a sudden loud clang. The celestial fire furnace shook violently. The huge furnace seemed to be swaying and could topple over at any time. The raging fire in the furnace seemed to overflow at any time and burn everything here. No matter how the celestial fire furnace shook, Long Fei Yi was like Mount Tai, standing tall and unmoving. His large hand suddenly clenched into a fist. In an instant, the treasured sword was like a solemn and desolate sword chi, shooting straight up from the huge cauldron and flying straight out. The sword was out of the furnace. The sword hadn't been enlightened yet, but it seemed to have spirituality. Its momentum was like a rainbow, very domineering and powerful. It rushed straight to the top, as if it wanted to escape from this place and not let anyone subdue it. How could Long Fei Yi allow this to happen? This was the sword he wanted to give to Han Yunqi. He flew up and spread out his hands. Gu only felt the sword on his back tremble. Before he could recover, the Ganjiang sword on his back flew out of the Guqin case and fell into Long Fei Yi's hand. Long Fei Yi held the sword and didn't use any power. He only used the purest of strength to fiercely hack at the newly forged sword. The two swords collided and a loud clang sound shook everyone's ears. Even their hearts felt like they were about to be torn apart. One had to know that although Long Fei Yi didn't use any power, just the Ganjiang sword power was incredible. There was no weapon in the world that could withstand the Ganjiang sword's attack. However, the newly forged treasured sword withstood the attack and did not suffer any damage. At this time, everyone knew that Long Fei Yi was testing the sword. Only this kind of sword could withstand Mo Xie's sword spirit. Only this kind of sword was worthy of the Ganjiang sword. Only this kind of sword was worthy of Han Yunqi. The newly forged sword seemed to be intimidated by the Ganjiang sword and didn't dare to escape. It floated in the air under the Ganjiang sword as if it had submitted. Long Fei gripped the sword hilt before descending to the ground. He seriously looked at the sword and saw that the sword's body was like frost and snow, sparkling with a cold light. The sword hilt was covered in a faint flame, as if it was the afterglow of the earth fire. From Long Fei-ye's expression, one couldn't tell if he was satisfied or not. However, since he was holding in his hands, he must have approved of it. Everyone flew to his side. Old Man of Alchemy quickly said, "Your Highness, you can start sharpening it. The diamond has already been prepared. It's on the side." Yi Xiao seriously said, "Diamond was the hardest thing in the world, and it was the best tool for sharpening. There were only a few people who had diamond, and Yi Xiao was one of them." Long Fei-yi didn't make sound. He held the sword with one hand and silently watched. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to do. When Han Yunxi was here, this guy was very taciturn. He barely spoke a few words all day. Now that Han Yunxi wasn't here, who could make him open his mouth? Just as everyone was helpless and unsure of what to do, Long Fei-yi actually spoke up. He calmly said, "Let her do it herself." Then he turned to leave, leaving everyone looking at each other in dismay. This guy didn't seem to have answered Old Man of Alchemy or Yi Xiao's questions. He was just talking to himself. Where was he going? After the central and southern regions were pacified, he left the army and only occasionally learned of his whereabouts from the Shadow Guard. Just like Gu, he seemed to be running all over the world in search of his whereabouts. He didn't have the slightest clue and had searched almost every place he could find. He even searched the Poison Sect's Forbidden Grounds, which was the most suspicious place. He even went to the collapsed underground palace and was almost trapped inside. But there was still no sign of that woman. There was a trace of fear hidden in his heart that Gu Beiyue and the others would never know. Ever since he found out that Han Yunxi came from the future, he would feel uneasy if he didn't see her for even a day. Not everyone in this world could bear to miss someone. Some people were destined to be together in order to feel at ease. Big Brother Tang Li was the first to recover his wits and chased after him. But Gu Beiyue quickly overtook him and caught up to Long Fei-yi. Now that he'd seen Long Fei-yi, he wouldn't let Long Fei-yi out of his sight. Was protecting the princess a kind of protection as well? Even if he couldn't protect the princess for now, he could at least protect her happiness. Long Fei-yi mounted his horse, and Tang Li chased after him. "Big Brother, don't be like this. My sister-in-law will be upset if she finds out." Big Brother, actually, Tang Li was just about to confess that he'd told Han Yunxi about their childhood when Su Donglin suddenly arrived. He hadn't been able to find his master during this time, so he could only follow Gu Beiyue. He didn't even have time to greet his master, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. He hurriedly handed a letter to Gu Beiyue. Medical City just sent it over. They say it's an urgent secret letter. They want you to read it personally and reply as soon as possible. What could Medical City be so urgent? Could it be that they had news of Han Yunxi? Long Fei-yi, who was just about to leave, immediately looked over and said coldly, "What is it?" As expected, only things related to Han Yunxi could make him open his mouth. Chapter 11:15. Since Long Fei-yi had already spoken, how could Gu Beiyue not hurry to read the letter? In fact, he could roughly guess what was going on with this urgent letter from Medicine City. At this moment, he was both nervous and terrified. He was nervous because there must be some clues about the matter he had entrusted to fourth young Miss Ren. He was also terrified because if there really was a clue, he could no longer hide the fact that Princess Long Fei-yi was pregnant. Even though he was prepared to be resented, he was still terrified. After all, he was at fault for this matter. Gu Beiyue anxiously opened the letter and found that there were 2 letters inside. One reported the disappearance of fourth young Miss Ren, and the other was a prescription. Today was the morning of the 5th day of the new year, and fourth young Miss Ren had gone missing on the night of the 3rd. This secret letter had been sent from Medical City to Medicine Hut in less than 2 days, which was quite fast. Less than 4 hours after fourth young Miss Ren's disappearance, someone had brought this prescription to the obstetrics hall for a doctor to examine. When Long Fei-yi dismounted, Gu Beiyue took the initiative to hand over the letter and prescription to him. Gu and the others also hurried over. However, apart from Gu Beiyue, no one else could see how this had anything to do with Han Yunxi's whereabouts. Fourth young Miss Ren is a doctor of obstetrics, right? Gu asked curiously. Gu Beiyue glanced at Long Fei-yi helplessly, but he didn't delay or hesitate. He said, "Everyone, take a look at the prescription first. It was sent to the obstetrics hall for a checkup after fourth young Miss Wren went missing. And then? Gu still didn't understand. Long Fei Ye's brows furrowed as he waited, but he was about to lose his patience. At this time, Tang Li interrupted. There's a problem with this prescription. Purple forest grass, chestnut green, and 10 Direction Wonderbud are all forbidden medicines. Who wrote this prescription? Other than Gu Beiwei, all the men present did not know about the medical school's reform of the obstetrics department, but Tang Li was very clear about it. Back then, he had made ample preparations for Ning Jing's baby. Not only had he hired the most experienced midwife, but he had also hired several obstetricians to wait at the Tang sect. Among the things he had to take note of in his booklet, there were things like forbidden drugs for pregnant women. He had memorized all the forbidden drugs that Gu Beiwei had told him. Long Fei Yi ignored Tang Li and looked at Gu Beiwei coldly. Obviously, Tang Li only knew the tip of the iceberg but not the whole story. Yes, get rid of the 3 forbidden drugs. This is a prescription for pregnant women to prevent miscarriage. Judging from the combination of the herbs and the use of the dosage, it is very professional. The person who can write such a prescription must be a doctor above the 6th rank, Gu Beiwei explained. If it's a doctor above the 6th rank, why would he write a prescription for forbidden drugs? The old man of alchemy could not help but ask. Other than a few old people in the obstetrics department, only 4th young Mistress Wren is a doctor above the 6th rank, Gu Beiwei said. 4th young Mistress Wren wrote it on purpose. Tang Li exclaimed. Yes, 4th young Mistress Wren fell into the hands of the robbers. I'm afraid that the robbers forced her to write a prescription for miscarriage, so she used the prescription to send out the news. Gu Beiwei was very sure. Long Fei Yi heard this, but he still did not hear any clues related to Han Yunqi. He said coldly, What an urgent letter! An urgent letter was a letter used by the Shadow Guard to deliver the most urgent information. Unless it was an important or urgent matter, the Shadow Guard would not use it. The matter of 4th young Mistress Wren alone was not enough to activate such a letter. Gu Beiwei hurriedly retreated and bowed with both hands clasped in front of his chest. Your Highness, I have something to hide from you. I dare not hope that your Highness will punish me, but please calm down. You can punish me after you find the princess. As soon as he said this, everyone quieted down and did not dare to say anything. Gu Beiwei's mistake must be a serious matter. Gu Beiwei did not stop and continued. Your Highness, the princess is pregnant. She's been pregnant for about 5 months now. As soon as he said this, everyone gasped. Long Fei Yi could not stand steadily and staggered a few steps. He looked at Gu Beiwei in disbelief and could not believe what he had heard. This was probably the most unexpected news in his life. It came too suddenly. He had always known that Han Yunqi was preparing to get pregnant, but this news was still absolutely unexpected to him. The child was about 5 months old, and Han Yunqi had been missing for more than 3 months. In other words, Han Yunqi was pregnant before she was kidnapped? Shouldn't Han Yunqi be the one to tell him such a thing? Han Yunqi was a doctor. She should know her own body very well. She should be the first to know. Why didn't she tell him? This was an accident and also a blow, followed by a pleasant surprise. Long Fei Yi was in a daze. He did not know the reason and felt as if the world had darkened. He did not have the time to think about why Han Yunqi did not tell him, nor did he have the time to blame her for taking such a risk to travel with him, even though she was pregnant. There was only that miscarriage prevention medicine in his mind. Did something happen to Han Yunqi? Who here had ever seen Long Fei like this? He was an indomitable spirit who stood tall and straight like a pine tree. When had anyone ever seen him stumble on his feet? This was the scene that Gu Beiwei did not want to see the most. However, things had developed to this point. He had to face it and tell Long Fei Yi everything. When he was in Tianshan Mountain, he had checked the princess's body temperature and pulse and found signs of pregnancy in her body. However, he cannot be sure. Signs of pregnancy did not mean that the pregnancy was successful. It could be that the pregnancy was not successful, or it could be that the pregnancy was successful, but it could be unknowingly miscarried in a few days. The early stages of pregnancy were full of all kinds of uncertain factors. Some people even miscarried after the pregnancy was successful without feeling anything at all. Some people even mistook the blood as a good friend, messed up. Gu Beiwei had just felt the pulse by accident. It was too early to say anything, so he did not say anything. He just prescribed some medicine for Han Yunxi to nourish the body and not affect the pregnancy. When Gu Beiwei felt the pulse for the second time, he was very clear that the princess was pregnant. However, he still did not say anything, because it was the early stages of pregnancy at that time. Even the best gynecologist could not feel the pulse, let alone the princess herself. Gu Beiwen knew that in another half a month, the princess would be able to sense the change in his body and feel the pulse of pregnancy. He did not want to say anything because it was only half a month away. This kind of thing should have been discovered by the princess herself, and the princess should have shared it with His Highness. After all, he was an outsider. If it were not for his good medical skills, he would not have been the first to know. At that time, he was about to go to Tiger's prison to save someone. He hesitated. However, after weighing the pros and cons, he still chose to hide it. He gave the princess a good miscarriage prevention medicine and protected her carefully along the way. At that time, Jun Yixie asked the princess to go to Tiger's prison. He had made all the preparations and would not let the princess be in danger no matter what. After Tiger's prison was out of danger, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief and relaxed. He was looking forward to the princess finding the good news and sharing it with everyone. But who knew that just a few days after Tiger's prison was out of danger, the disciples of the Li clan's Mu family rose up everywhere. They had just reached the central region when they were threatened by Mu Yuan's massacre. They were almost constantly on the move and busy. In fact, he did not know whether the princess had been so busy during this period of time that she had neglected her body, or whether she had found out that she was pregnant but was afraid of being put under house arrest by His Highness, so she did not say anything. He could only prescribe her miscarriage prevention medicine on the grounds of nursing her body. In fact, at that time, he would rather the princess not know. Because facing Bai Yanqing and facing the pressure of dual cultivation, in these few months, they had a fight with Bai Yanqing no matter what. In other words, if the princess knew that she was pregnant, she would still choose to go to Tian, an imperial city, to take the risk. Instead of letting the princess make a painful and risky choice, it was better to let her not know anything. He would make this cruel choice. Unfortunately, they failed in Tian, an imperial city, and fell into Bai Yanqing's array. From that moment on, he knew that no matter what, he had to hide this matter as much as possible. Because if His Highness knew that the princess was pregnant, he probably would not be able to hold on to his last calmness. While enduring and hiding it, he sent the news to 4th Miss Ren. Gu Beiwei did not explain so much to Long Fei Yi. He only said 2 things. First, the princess did not know that she was pregnant early. Second, he was worried that the princess' pregnancy would affect his plan to deal with Bai Yanqing, so he secretly concealed this matter. Gu Beiwei treated this bad guy to the end. As soon as he finished speaking, Long Fei Yi fiercely punched him in the face. The wind from the punch was so strong that the surrounding people instinctively scattered. Gu Beiwei did not move. When he gave the secret order to 4th Miss Ren, he was already prepared to take the punch. If this punch landed, his face would probably collapse. Gu Beiwei accepted it and closed his eyes. However, Long Fei Yi's fist stopped in front of Gu Beiwei's face. Just a little bit, and the bridge of his nose would have collapsed. Long Fei's fury condensed in his fist. His punches were fierce and fast, so if he didn't use them now, he'd have nowhere to vent them. Otherwise, he'd suffer a backlash. Gu Beiwei quickly opened his eyes. However, at this moment, the force from Long Fei Yi's fist rebounded along his arm and hit him heavily. Long Fei Yi spat out a mouthful of blood. No one knew if this mouthful of blood was caused by the backlash, or was it caused by anger and anxiety. In short, he did not hurt Gu Beiwei. Instead, he hurt himself. "Brother," Tang Li shouted. He could understand his brother's feelings at this moment, because he had experienced it himself. Therefore, after his sister-in-law fell into Bai Yanqing's hands, he had not mentioned Ning Jing or urged them to save her. He knew that there was no need. Gu stood to the side with his fists tightly clenched. However, He did not say anything. Only God knew what he was thinking. Old Man of Alchemy and Yi Xiao were very worried. However, when they saw Long Fei Ye's cold expression, they did not dare to say anything. Gu Beiwei wanted to give His Highness some time to lick the wound in his heart. However, time was of the essence, and he did not want to delay. Fourth young Mistress Ren went missing for less than 4 hours, and this prescription was sent to the maternity hall. This means that fourth young Mistress Ren wrote this prescription in Medical City. I can't guarantee that fourth Miss Ren was kidnapped by Bai Yanqing, but this is a clue. If she was really kidnapped by Bai Yanqing, then based on this prescription, the princess should be fine. This was the only comforting words Gu Beiwei could say. Long Fei Ye's eyes were a little red. He tied the Ganjiang sword and the new Immerse sword together and carried them on his back. Although the two swords were heavy, his back was still straight. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said coldly, "Let's go to Medical City." Chapter 11:16. After bidding farewell to the Old Man of Alchemy and Yi Xiao, Long Fei Yi and the others sped towards the north. None of them mentioned Han Yunqi's pregnancy. Long Fei Yi didn't blame Gu Beiwei for keeping it a secret either. There were only 2 reasons why they didn't speak of it. One was that it was slowly fermenting in their hearts and would explode one day. The other was that there was no need to talk about it, and everyone knew what was going on. They believed that for them, it was the latter. Along the way, other than hurrying on with their journey, no one spoke much. Gu Qixiao led the way in front, taking them through a shortcut between Medical City and Medicine City. He'd taken this path countless times since he was young. Gu Qixiao would occasionally glance back at Long Fei, partly because he was puzzled over how Long Fei had been able to support such a heavy sword. On the other hand, it was probably because of Immerse's sword spirit. The Ganjiang sword was back in Long Fei Ye's hands. Before the new sword was infused with Immerse's sword spirit, Gu would have to follow Long Fei Yi. At this time, no one would pay attention to this matter. If Poison Girl was here, she would definitely laugh at him. Poison Girl was pregnant. Would she lose her appetite and not eat well? Was she locked up? She wondered if she was sleeping well. What was with the miscarriage? Would there be any lingering effects? Gu's mind was unconsciously filled with all kinds of questions. He looked at Long Fei Yi and pondered another question. What was Long Fei Yi thinking now? Over the past 3 months, not only had he been running around looking for people, he had also found a few old masters to thoroughly learn the Chimen shield technique. He wanted to see how Bai Yanqing was going to trap them this time. They both had undying bodies, but he was at least younger than Bai Yanqing. He was waiting for the day he could face the man head-on. Although Gu Beiwei couldn't be sure that fourth young Miss Ren had fallen into Bai Yanqing's hands, this was at least a clue. Compared to the 3 months of cluelessness, this was actually a very good piece of news. However, they were in a hurry and didn't have time to be surprised. They just wanted to reach Medical City as soon as possible. They were so anxious that no one sent a letter to Ning Cheng in Northernly to tell him about this. Ning Cheng's letter to the Tian and imperial capital had to go through many twists and turns before it reached Gu Beiwei. Currently, Ning Cheng was on the battlefield. Although it was a small battle, he could only put his life on the line to kill his enemies so that he could forget about his worries. Mu Ling was far away at the Tang clan taking care of little Tang Tang. She was worried as well, but she still listened to Lady Tang's advice and didn't go down the mountain to add to their troubles. With her mediocre martial arts skills, even dealing with Bai Yanqing and the poison guards by Bai Yanqing's side would be a big problem. Mu Ling wasn't just worried about her big sister, but Gu as well. She knew that Big Brother Qi must have gone on a rampage all over Cloud Realm continent over the past 3 months. A few days ago, 5th Elder of the D Clan's Myriad Merchant Hall had sent a letter asking for a batch of medicinal ingredients that Ning Cheng's army urgently needed. Mu Ling thought of Jinzi again. Even now, he hadn't contacted her, much less asked her to go back. A year ago, he kept his word. Mu Ling would sometimes ask herself if she was a trustworthy person. Little Tang Tang was no longer a baby in swaddling clothes. She could raise her head and sit up. The little girl's eyes weren't especially big, but they glowed with vigor and spirit. Lady Tang thought she looked like Tang Li, but Mu Ling thought she looked like Ning Jing. Mu Ling and Lady Tang would carry little Tang Tang to sit by the mountain gates every day. Even though they knew Tang Tang's parents wouldn't be back so soon, they insisted on waiting every day. To Lady Tang, this was the only thing she could look forward to. Lady Tang, if Tang Li comes back, will he take a concubine? Mu Ling had wanted to ask this question for a long time. She was asking it on behalf of Ning Jing. Lady Tang hesitated for a long time before replying calmly. That's not for me to decide. Mu Ling immediately understood. She suddenly didn't want Tang Li and Sister Jing to come back. She hoped that Tang Li would rescue Sister Jing and take Sister Jing far away. She would definitely be responsible for stealing the child down the mountain for them. Tang Li knew that Sister Jing couldn't have another child, so he should know what Sister Jing would face when she returned to the Tang sect. Seeing Mu Ling remain silent, Lady Tang patted her shoulder and said calmly, "Don't think too much. As long as they come back safely, as long as my granddaughter has a father and a mother, it's more important than anything else." Right? Mu Ling nodded seriously. Little Tang Tang seemed to have felt the faint sadness between them. Her little mouth pouted, and she suddenly began to cry. Lady Tang quickly hugged her and coaxed her, her face full of heartache. Those who didn't know the news anxiously waited, but those with clues were even more anxious. In a few days, Long Fei Yi and the others secretly arrived at Medical City. On the way here, Long Fei Yi had arranged for the Shadow Guard to spread false news that they were in Jiangnan. If Bai Yanqing was really hiding in Medical City, then this fake news would at least numb him for a while. Once they arrived, Long Fei Yi wasn't in a hurry to find them because fourth young Miss Ren had only sent a message that they might be in Medical City. Since fourth young Miss Ren was able to use one prescription, she would definitely be able to send out a second one. Given Long Fei Ye's understanding of Han Yunxi, he was confident that Han Yunxi would be able to use the prescription to send out accurate information in a short amount of time. Thus, their current task was to secretly set up defenses without alerting the snake in the grass. They'd surround Medical City and the Poison Sect's forbidden grounds to prevent Bai Yanqing from noticing anything amiss and escaping. Long Fei Yi transferred all of the Shadow Guard's elite troops here, with Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin as the leaders. Bailey Mingxiang had been with Chu Shifeng at the Tang clan until he left to join the Shadow Guard. It wasn't that she didn't want to return to the army, but that she wanted to do her part in rescuing the princess. When Bai Yanqing found out that the princess was dual cultivating with His Highness, there was no need for her to exist anymore. But the princess hadn't asked her for the raging flame Red Lotus back, but had left it for her to protect herself. Not to mention other favors. Just based on this matter alone, she couldn't leave at this time. After arriving at Medical City, she didn't stay with the Shadow Guard, but stayed with the female mercenaries from the City of Daughters. Long Fei Yi secretly set up tight defenses and remade a map of Medical City for everyone to study and discuss. Bai Yanqing's most likely hiding place was the Poison Sect. The most likely place to hide was the Poison Sect, but it was huge and filled with secret areas that even Gu Beiyue and Gu Qishao didn't know about. Here, the altar is the most important area. That's where the mysterious black-robed man appeared last time. Long Fei Yi pointed at the map as he spoke. If the mysterious black-robed man was Bai Yanqing, then that meant he was hiding somewhere near the altar that they didn't know about. If the mysterious black-robed man wasn't Bai Yanqing, then he had to be someone from the Poison Sect's orphans. Perhaps finding him would give them a lot of help. Long Fei Yi rested his hands on the map on the table and stared at it with a serious expression. His thin, handsome face was still cold and cheerless, but there was a hint of seriousness and caution that hadn't been there for the past 3 months. Gu Beiyue watched from the side, gratified. He knew that His Highness had returned. Thank goodness fourth Miss Ren was a clue. Otherwise, he couldn't imagine how terrible His Highness would feel when he found out about the princess's pregnancy and had no clues to find her. Would he break down? His Highness's current calmness and rationality weren't just being responsible for the princess, but the little master as well. Gu sat there the entire afternoon in a daze, not saying a word. He suddenly stood up and said seriously, "Could he be inside the altar's barrier?" Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiwei both looked at him in shock. If he was inside the altar's barrier, then they'd never be able to go in and save him. Only the blood of the poison sect's direct descendant could open the barrier. Moreover, the enchantment was filled with illusions. If Han Yunxi hadn't been brought in when she was conscious but unconscious, it was very possible that she wouldn't have realized she was in an illusion. In that case, she would have given out false information. In my opinion, that's not very likely. The illusions inside the altar's barrier are born from the heart and change with the heart. Bai Yanqing might not be able to control himself, so he wouldn't take such a risk, Gu Beiwei said seriously. Long Fei agreed with Gu Beiwei's opinion. Moreover, they'd sent many people to hide in the vicinity after leaving the altar last time. If Bai Yanqing had appeared, he would have been discovered long ago. Gu didn't say anything, but Long Fei muttered to himself, "If that barrier isn't afraid of illusions, then it's an excellent hiding place." After a moment of silence, Gu stood up again. "Long Fei, if that black-robed man isn't Bai Yanqing, could he be secretly watching Bai Yanqing as well?" Long Fei and Gu Beiwei agreed with this theory. Bai Yanqing was the poison sex orphan, so the black-robed man must be as well. The two of them should know each other, right? Just as the three of them were pondering this question, Tang Li rushed in from outside and handed a prescription to Gu Beiwei. Look, this is a prescription from a small town west of Medical City. They said there's a big problem. The prescription wasn't the original, but a doctor had rewritten it from memory. With fourth young Miss Ren's previous instructions and Gu Beiwei's secret orders, the doctor didn't dare to startle the snake in the grass. He could only pretend he hadn't noticed anything and pass the prescription as usual. Either he had the customer go to a pharmacy to get the ingredients, or he could just get them from the clinic. This prescription was very special, so the doctor had no choice but to act first and report later. He had the customer take the ingredients away before reporting it to Gu Beiwei. There was a very strange name on the prescription. It was called Drilling Earthwind. It was a rare ingredient in Cloud Realm continent, so very few people knew what it was. It wasn't meant to protect the fetus, but pregnant women had to be more careful when using it. Too much of it could loosen up the muscles, bones, and blood. Judging from the prescription, Gu Beiwei was certain that it came from fourth young Miss Ren's hands. Normal doctors wouldn't be able to write such a prescription, but this Drilling Earthwind really left him perplexed. If he took away the 3 words Drilling Earthwind, then the prescription would be used to protect the fetus. What was fourth young Miss Ren trying to say by using Drilling Earthwind? Drilling Earthwind? Long Fei muttered to himself. Chapter 11:17. Drilling Wind? The name of this medicine was quite strange. While Long Fei was still mumbling to himself, Gu spoke first. Gu Beiwei, if this prescription doesn't use Drilling Wind, what should we use? Gu was a pharmaceutical genius. Of course, he could name several herbs that matched this prescription. However, this was a gynecological prescription after all, so he still had to ask for Gu Beiwei's opinion. Gu Beiwei was also silent. His brows furrowed slightly as he looked at the 3 words Drilling Wind. Seventh young master, do you mean that the answer isn't in the 3 words Drilling Wind, but in the names of the herbs? Tang Li asked hurriedly. Gu's train of thought was not bad. Gu was rarely so serious. He said, based on this prescription, there are a few herbs that can match, such as the common astragalus root, atractylodes, blood-nourishing soil, parasitic soil, pumpkin stem, and rami root. There are also rare herbs such as flower whiskers, black spirit skin, Buddha jade, sky leaf, maha root, and night dew. Tang Li felt a headache coming on when he heard Gu's words. He looked at Gu Beiwei. There were so many herbs that could be added to the prescription, but Gu Beiwei had to figure out which one to use. After all, fourth young Mistress Ren's medical skills were taught by Gu Beiwei. Gu Beiwei would be familiar with her prescribing habits. However, even if Gu Beiwei confirmed which herb fourth young Mistress Ren was going to use, they still had to figure it out. What could they figure out from the names of these herbs? Gu Beiwei was looking at the prescription again. After a while, he said, based on this prescription, fourth young Mistress Wren might use these 4 herbs. One of them is night dew, sky leaf, attractalodes, and black spirit skin. Night dew, sky leaf, attractalodes, and black spirit skin? Go try to figure it out. Literally speaking, these 2 names didn't seem to convey any information. Tangley took a pen and paper and wrote down the words night dew, sky leaf, attractalodes, black spirit skin. No matter how he tried to match them, he could not match the names of the places. Gu Beiwei felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. There were several ways to guess the answer to such a riddle. He was not sure which one it was, so he could only try the one Gu suggested. Everyone stared at the words night dew, celestial leaf, attractalodes, black spirit skin for a long time without any clue. Long Fei Yi suddenly said, Tangley, go and find all the names in Medical City. Don't miss a single one. If it was his Han Yunxi, the information she would send out would definitely be the name of the place. This was the most direct way to ask for help. According to Gu's method of searching for medicine, he would not be able to piece it together. In order to not miss any details, he had to list all the names of the places and compare them with the names one by one. He had to pick out all the suspects and then think about it again. Yes, Tangley immediately went to carry out the order. He had already turned his grief and anger into strength. Although he was reluctant to part with little Tang Tang, nothing could stop him from doing his part to save Ning Jing and his sister-in-law. After Tangley left, Long Fei Yi took Gu's arm and replaced it with a large piece of white paper. He wrote down the 3 words, drilling different. These 3 words are the most direct message, so they could not be missed. Perhaps the message Han Yunxi and 4th young Mistress Wren wanted to send them was in these 3 words. Long Fei Yi's heart sank. He regained his usual calmness and steadiness. He would not let go of any possibility. After he finished writing those 3 words, he looked at Gu Beiwei and said calmly, Are you sure these are the only 4 herbs? Gu Beiwei finally felt that something was wrong. They had to first determine what the princess and the others wanted to send out before deciphering the secret of the name of the medicine. Only then would they have a target. I'm sure, based on the combination of the herbs and the dosage of this prescription, we have to use one of these 4 herbs for this prescription to match 4th young Mistress Wren's standard. Isn't there the best one? Long Fei Yi asked again. The 4 herbs are almost the same, Gu Beiwei answered seriously. Looking at the 13 large black words on the paper, the 3 men's expressions were solemn. If it was any other day, Gu would have grumbled that he would stop guessing and go to sleep. He had always hated this kind of wordplay. However, this concerned Poison Girl's safety. Even if he had to empty his brain, he had to continue thinking about it. There are 2 possibilities. The first is that they're trying to make up the words. Long Fei Yi explained calmly. They might only send out 1 word at a time. So, what we need to do is to pick out the suspicious words. Seeing that Gu Beiwei and Gu did not have any objections, Long Fei Yi continued. The second possibility is that they are hiding the words. Perhaps the words we pick out are not what they want to send out. The words they want to send out could be hidden in these 13 words. It could be a side word or the meaning of the words. It was rare for Gu to be so well-behaved. He gave Long Fei Yi a thumbs up and did not say anything else. Gu Beiwei had already started thinking about the 2 possibilities. Drilling Difeng, night dew, sky leaf, attractalodes, black spirit skin. These 13 words could also be separated into the word Jin, Tu, Yi, Ren, Yulu, Da Ko, Ten, Rimu, and Hua. Gu Beiwei separated these words and wrote them all down. Then, he wrote down all the new words that could be made from these words. Together with the 13 words from before, he quickly filled up a piece of white paper. These were just words and did not include the meaning of the words. Gu Beiwei was about to think about how many meanings there could be when Long Fei Yi stopped him. He said, they shouldn't be hiding it so deeply. They don't have much time. It would take a lot of time to come up with a riddle that was so deeply hidden. Moreover, it would require a pen and ink. It was very difficult to think with just one's brain. They had to write down all the words and study them one by one before they could piece them together. Han Yunshi and the rest were imprisoned and might be under surveillance. It was almost impossible to do that. Gu Beiwei suddenly understood. That makes sense. Thus, their attention returned to the 13 words drilling diphthong. Night dew, sky leaf, attractalodes, black spirit skin. Long Fei picked up his pen again and pieced together the 3 words into common phrases. Heaven and earth, night breeze, son of heaven, day, night, earth. There was no point in thinking any further. They could only wait for Tang Li to bring back the names. Tang Li left for a long time before returning. He left alone, but came back with Chu Shifeng, Su Donglin, and Bailey Mingxiang. Medical City occupied a large area and could be considered an upper-middle-sized city. It would take a long time to organize all the names of its places. Tang Li went to the medical academy to find Department Head Shun and found 2 geographical maps. All the names of Medical City were listed in them. Big bro, this is a big project. I'll call the 3 of them over as well, so we can organize it together, Tang Li said seriously. Long Fei tacitly agreed, so Gu Beiwei explained how they decipher the names. Tang Li tore the maps into pieces and gave each of them a copy. Then everyone worked through the night. There were simply too many names in Medical City. By the time dawn broke, they'd only managed to organize half of them. At daybreak, Han Yunshi and 4th young Miss Ren had just woken up. Although they didn't know night and day, their biological clocks were still normal. Su Xiaoyu and Ning Jing were locked up in separate rooms. As for Mu Qingwu, neither of them had seen him. Han Yunshi assumed that she'd see Duanmu Yao, but she'd never heard Bai Yanqing mention her, much less see her. Han Yunshi mused that Duanmu Yao was probably used by Bai Yanqing before he killed her with a single slash. Since Bai Yanqing was so determined to kidnap her and hide her, there was no point in keeping Duanmu Yao alive. With 4th young Miss Ren personally attending to her day and night, Han Yunshi recovered very quickly. According to 4th young Miss Ren, she'd be able to get out of bed after lying down for another 10 days or so. As for medicine, she actually didn't need to take it anymore. All medicine had side effects, so it would more or less affect the child in the womb. Although Han Yunshi didn't need to take medicine anymore, 4th young Miss Ren still decocted it every day. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to write a prescription. Princess, the prescription must be in Academy Head Beiyue's hands. I just don't know if they'll be able to find any clues. 4th young Miss Ren was a bit worried. Although they had plenty of reasons to send out the prescription, they were also worried that Bai Yanqing would come to his senses one day and cut off their path. After all, Bai Yanqing's goal was none other than to make Han Yunshi and Long Fei Ye's dual cultivation fail and turn against each other. There was no need for him to take this risk for a child in the womb. As a result, Han Yunshi and 4th young Miss Ren both felt the need to send out as much information as possible in the shortest amount of time possible. 4th young Miss Ren suggested using the Tibetan character on a secret prescription to send out the address. She wanted to use cassia seed and guanfang, 2 types of Chinese medicine. Cassia seed could induce premature labor, so it would be very easy for doctors in the OB/GYN department to see through it. Guanfang, on the other hand, was the Chinese medicine guanfang feng. There were countless types of Chinese medicine, so they were innumerable and impossible to recognize. When Bai Yanqing saw guanfang, he would only think it was a medicine he didn't recognize, but doctors in the OB/GYN department would be able to see through the prescription. When the name reached Dean Biyue's hands, he should be able to understand it and would fill in the word feng. As a result, a prescription could send out the 2 words feng ming. These 2 words would be enough. 4th young Miss Ren had gone to great lengths to come up with this idea, but Han Yunshi still rejected it in the end. That was because there was a risk to this idea. Bai Yanqing was a poisons master. He wasn't familiar with medicine, but he was familiar with medicine. When he saw guanfang, he might think it was a medicine he didn't recognize, or he might be able to tell that they were playing with words. Once Bai Yanqing got his hands on the prescription, all their plans would fail. Han Yunshi had risked the child in her womb and lost a lot of blood for this rare opportunity. She had to play it safe. She mulled over it for a very, very long time. In the end, she had 4th young Miss Ren list out all the herbs that could improve blood circulation and the ones with feng in their names. As a result, she found the name Earth Drilling Wind. Afterwards, she had fourth young Miss Wren list out all the most suitable herb for the prescription. Fourth young Miss Wren said, Night Dew, Sky Leaf, Attractalodes, Black Spirit Skin. As soon as she heard these four names, Han Yunshi was overjoyed. She had fourth young Miss Wren only use Earth Drilling Wind. If Long Fei Yi and the others weren't smart enough, they would at least leave behind Guanfang. They would then find a way to send out Ming and Shan in their next prescription. If Long Fei Yi and the others were smart enough, they would definitely be able to find the name of the place from these three words. As for Bai Yanxing, who didn't know anything about obstetrics and medicine, he definitely wouldn't be able to tell. Even if they can't tell this time, there's always next time. There's no need to worry. At the very least, we'll be able to send out the prescription once, Han Yunshi said indifferently. Right now, all she could think about was how Long Fei knew about her pregnancy. Chapter 11:18. Although Han Yunshi didn't know that Gu Beiwei already knew about her pregnancy, Han Yunshi was certain that once fourth young Mistress Ren's prescription was found out by Long Fei, he would immediately guess that she was pregnant. Bai Yanxing only had Duanmu Yao by his side, and Bai Yanxing might not even bring her along, let alone care about her miscarriage. Bai Yanxing only had a few hostages, and the one who was most likely to be pregnant was her, who had been preparing to have a child. If Long Fei knew that she was pregnant, he should be happy, but under such circumstances, he would definitely be upset. And at the same time, he also knew about her miscarriage. How anxious must he be? She had been preparing to give him a surprise, but helplessly, it turned into a shock. After fourth young Mistress Ren took her pulse, she gave her a clear time of pregnancy, which made her realize a terrifying thing. It was said that pregnancy lasted for 10 months, but it was actually only 9 months. The estimated date of delivery was actually about the same as the time limit of dual cultivation. If it didn't complete dual cultivation this morning, she didn't know if she could still control Immerse sword when she was in the late stages of pregnancy or 1 or 2 months after delivery. Anxious. Long Fei must have thought about this too, and he was probably more anxious than her. She didn't know if Immerse sword was successfully forged. When could they meet again? Han Yunshi was still considered patient and could endure silently. However, fourth young Mistress Ren was here. After she figured out all these things, she seemed calm and composed, but in fact, she couldn't control her temper and became irritable. She really hoped that Long Fei and the rest could guess everything from the 3 words, drilling wind, and quickly come to save her. Fourth young mistress, do you remember the path you took when you came here? Han Yunshi asked seriously. They blindfolded me, but I remember that I jumped from a high place twice, and both times were very deep. Fourth young Mistress Ren said seriously. The entrance should be on the ground. There's an entrance on the ground. It's the passage outside our stone room. It leads to the cliff outside. It's also an entrance, Han Yunshi said in a low voice. She then asked, when you came here, was there anything else that left a deep impression on you? Fourth young Mistress Ren thought for a moment and said, after we landed, there seemed to be a section of the road that kept turning and going around for a long time. That's all. Han Yunshi nodded. Looks like this underground palace isn't small. There are many passageways. While Han Yunshi and fourth young Mistress Ren were guessing the situation in the underground palace, Long Fei and the others stayed up all night and finally sorted out all the names of the medical city. They sorted out all the names with the words drilling, Difeng, Night Dew, Sky Leaf, Attractalodes, and Black Spirit Skin on a piece of paper and divided them into 13 sections. In total, there were 178 names. Long Fei personally picked out 53 names that could be used as hiding places, then divided them into 3 categories: the Poison Sect, the Medical Academy, and the Medical City. Medical City had the main residence, shops, temples, gardens, and so on. The Medical Academy had its storehouses, forbidden grounds, and so on. There wasn't much to divide the Poison Sect into. There was only Clear Breeze Mountain and Sky Pit, both of which contained the words wind and sky. Even so, everyone was still confused. 53 names and 13 characters. It was really not easy to pick one out of the 53 clues. How about this? Let's discuss them one by one. Gu suggested. Long Fei rolled his eyes at him and said coldly, Gu Beiwe, I'll give you one night to walk through the medical city and the medical academy and find out what's going on. All right, Gu Beiwe gladly accepted the order. Actually, Long Fei already had a rough idea of what was going on. Although the most dangerous place was the safest place, Bai Yanqing wouldn't take the risk of hiding a hostage in the medical city or the medical academy. He was most likely hiding in the poison sect. If Bai Yanqing was holding someone else hostage, he might still hide in the medical city and the medical academy. However, he was holding Han Yunqi hostage. As long as he hid in the medical city and the medical academy, Han Yunqi would definitely have a way to call for reinforcements. The poison sect was Bai Yanqing's only choice. Long Fei had only told Gu Beiwe to walk through the medical city and the medical academy to be on the safe side. After all, this was just a guess. After Gu Beiwe left, Long Fei sat down at the tea table. He calmly drank 3 cups of strong tea to clear his head and calm himself down. Anyone who loved tea liked to drink strong tea. It was a waste of tea and the most barbaric and unhealthy way to drink it. This was probably Long Fei's first time drinking strong tea in his life. He needed to refresh himself and calm down. He'd only stayed up for 2 nights in Medicine City, but he'd lost sleep for several nights in other places. Many times, insomnia was a type of incompatibility that didn't suit certain people. After drinking the strong tea, Long Fei's gaze fell on the names Sky Pit and Clear Breeze Mountain. Actually, he'd already guessed that Bai Yanqing was hiding in the poison sect when he arrived at Medical City. When he saw the name Drilling Earth Wind, he immediately thought of the Clear Breeze Mountain. Everything he'd done wasn't just to test his theory, but also for safety's sake. Even though he only had these 2 names in front of him, he didn't dare to recklessly conclude that Han Yunqi and the others were imprisoned in Clear Breeze Mountain. He couldn't afford to take the risk. He wouldn't act rashly unless he was absolutely certain and had a reason to convince himself. After all, this was their only lead. If they found the wrong place and startled the snake, Bai Yanqing would escape. Heaven knows when they'd find the next clue. Long Fei didn't say a word. Gu and Tang Li looked at each other in dismay. They sat down to rest while waiting for Gu Beiyue's news. Su Donglin and the others had already left. At this moment, the Shadow Guard delivered a letter. It was for Gu Beiwe. Seeing that Gu Beiwe wasn't there and that His Highness was deep in thought, the Shadow Guard didn't dare to disturb him. He passed the letter to Tang Li. Sect Master Tang. This is from the Ning family's patriarch to young Master Northmoon. He sent it over from the Tian. And what's going on in Northern Li? Why don't you tell my brother? Tell Gu Beiwe? Tang Li asked softly. This lowly one is responsible for delivering letters. This lowly one doesn't know what's going on either. The Shadow Guard was embarrassed and slipped away with that. Gu looked over and said, Idiot, you don't even need to think to know he's asking about the Poison Lass's whereabouts. Gu didn't purposefully lower his voice, so the words Poison Lass successfully attracted Long Fei's attention. He looked over and saw the letter in Tang Li's hand with a single glance. Tang Li was conflicted. On one side was his brother, and on the other was his brother-in-law. He was in a difficult position. Although he knew about the purple muslin dress, he had no idea about Ning Cheng's feelings for his sister-in-law. In his eyes, as a subordinate, Ning Cheng was concerned about the princess's whereabouts. It was perfectly justified. He stood there without moving. Just as he was at a loss for what to do, Long Fei had already looked away. He raised his hand and summoned a Shadow Guard, instructing him softly, Go ask about Ning Cheng's battle achievements. If he's defeated, have Bailey Yuanlong immediately send reinforcements. Once Ning Cheng was defeated, their agreement would come to an end. There was no need for him to let Ning Cheng enjoy the glory of fighting alone in Northern Li. Tonight was their 3rd night to catch up on sleep since arriving in Medical City, but they didn't know how many sleepless nights they'd had in the past 3 months. Humans had their biological limits. Tang Li and Gu both began to doze off. In the end, Gu fell asleep on the table. He was used to insomnia, so how tired must he be to fall asleep at a time like this? Long Fei Yi drank cup after cup of strong tea as he looked at the map of the poison sect and made markings. Aside from a few yawns, his face was tense the entire night. He was like an unsmiling deity, sitting upright in his chair. No one dared to look at him, much less approach him. At daybreak, Gu Beiyue finally returned. Seeing that Tang Li and Gu were both asleep, he didn't dare disturb them. He quietly walked to Long Fei Ye's side and murmured, "Your Highness, your health is more important." "How is it?" Long Fei Yi asked. With that, Tang Li and Gu both suddenly woke up. "Northman's back. Did anything happen? How is it?" Confusion was written all over their handsome faces, but as soon as they saw Gu Beiyue, they immediately sobered up. "We've checked everything. There's nothing," Gu Beiyue said seriously. "Then it's Clear Breeze Mountain." Long Fei Yi immediately answered. "Clear Breeze Mountain? I've been to that mountain twice. There's no place for anyone to hide. In my opinion, the sinkhole is more likely. All we know is that there's no place under the sinkhole that we don't know about." Gu immediately retorted. Long Fei didn't speak, but picked up a piece of paper with the names written on it. Among the 13 characters, Drilling Earth Wind, Night Dew, Sky Leaf, Attractalodes, and Black Spirit Skin, he'd circled 4 characters, Night Sky, White, and Black. "Day-night?" Gu Beiyue blurted out. Long Fei nodded and said coldly, "Sun moonlight. Day had a sun, night had a moon, and the sun and moon were light." With that, everyone fell silent and looked at one another. Very soon, Tang Li slapped his thigh viciously. "So that's how it is. Wind and light. That's Clear Breeze Mountain." Long Fei Yi took out a map and saw that it was already filled with landmarks. He called Su Donglin over and said coldly, "I'll give you 5 days. Gather all the men you can and deploy them according to this map." Gu glanced at the map and discovered that Long Fei Yi had set up 3 layers of defenses. The first layer surrounded the entire medical city, the second the entire poison sect, and the third the entire Phoenix Cry Mountain. Gu slowly narrowed his eyes, which shone with killing intent. If he didn't go all out this time, he wouldn't be Gu. "Big brother, give me one more day. I'll have someone bring the Tang clan's newest batch of hidden weapons over for the Shadow Guard." Tang Li said anxiously. Although he'd just woken up, the thought of seeing Ning Jing and getting his revenge roused his fighting spirit. "Approved," Long Fei Yi said. Even the usually gentle Gu Beiyue's eyes shone with frightening, killing intent. Long Fei Yi clenched his fists, his dark eyes so cold that they seemed bottomless. Chapter 11:19. Long Fei Yi gave the Shadow Guard 5 days to deploy. First of all, it would take some time to dispatch the Shadow Guard. And second of all, this deployment would be different from any of the previous ones. This time, they had to be extra careful. If even the slightest bit of information was leaked, the consequences would be unbearable. Of course, during these 5 days, Long Fei Yi and the others didn't idle around. Because even though they knew that the person was imprisoned in Fengming Mountain, the mountain was so big that they still needed to investigate the exact location. Long Fei Yi and Gu had both gone to Fengming Mountain to look for the person, but they couldn't find any trace of the person. This was enough to show that Bai Yanqing was well hidden. There must be a secret place in Fengming Mountain that they didn't know about. "Brother, let's send people to guard all the gynecology and obstetrics clinics within 100 miles. As long as Bai Yanqing sends people to get the medicine, we'll be able to catch him," Tang Li suggested. If they waited for the doctor in the pharmacy to finish writing the prescription and send it over, the person who went to get the medicine would have already gone far away. The best way was to wait. Gu immediately objected. "No, we can't do that. If we catch the person and bring him back, it'll be over if he doesn't confess." Even the most carefree Gu Qixiao had turned cautious and careful. If they caught the person who went to get the medicine, they wouldn't be able to find out where Bai Yanqing was hiding. If Bai Yanqing couldn't wait for the person who went to get the medicine, then all their efforts would be in vain. "Then we'll follow the person who went to get the medicine," Tang Li said anxiously. "Who's going to follow? What if we're discovered? Can you guarantee that nothing will go wrong?" Gu retorted. The person who went to get the medicine was very cunning. He didn't go to a fixed pharmacy to get the medicine. Last time, he went out of medical city to get the medicine. Who knew where he would go this time? With their martial arts skills, they wouldn't be discovered if they followed the person, but how were they supposed to set up an ambush without knowing where the person was going? If the shadow guard set up an ambush, it'd be fine if someone like Su Donglin or Chu Shifeng ran into the person. But if it was a regular shadow guard, it'd be easy to spot. At a time like this, Bai Yanqing's men had to have extraordinary martial arts and poison skills. Before they could come up with a better idea, the best thing they could do was to hold back their troops for now. Seeing Tang Li's defeated expression, Long Fei finally spoke up. "Cold," he said. "Last night, I've already sent down orders. Su Donglin and Chu Shifeng are already leading 10 experts to hide at all the entrances to Clear Breeze Peak. Over the next few days, they'll report to me if anyone comes in or out." Gu and Tang Li both looked at him in disbelief. Gu Beiwei sat on one side with a helpless smile. He wasn't surprised at all. "Big bro, how did you come up with this idea?" "Amazing. Really amazing." Tang Li was pleasantly surprised. What did it mean to wait for rabbits by a stump? This was the real deal. Sending a bunch of people to stand guard at the various pharmacies was full of uncontrollable factors. Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin, on the other hand, had 10 experts to guard the entrance to Clear Breeze Peak and wait for the right moment. That was much more reliable. Even if they couldn't track anyone, they'd at least know they'd come from Clear Breeze Peak. Tang Li had prostrated himself before his big bro since he was young, much less now. As for Gu, even if he approved of Long Fei, he wouldn't say it out loud. He looked at Long Fei and pursed his lips before withdrawing his gaze. Are there different levels of intelligence? He mused inwardly. 5 days could be said to be long, but it could also be said to be short. On the first and second day, they busied themselves with setting up defenses and reading up on all sorts of records about Clear Breeze Peak. On the third day, Chu Tianyin brought over 10 driving arrow experts from the Nether clan. Although Western Zhou had already retreated, Chu Tianyin only had 100 or so archers under his command after the betrayal and chaos of war. This was the last of the Nether clan's strength. Long Fei had him pick out 10 or so driving arrow experts as reinforcements. In addition, Long Fei had Tianshan Kenzo send over a group of sword experts as well. Since Bai Yanqing didn't want to fight them head-on and only wanted to stall for time, it was very likely that Bai Yanqing would continue to flee as soon as he discovered they'd broken into Clear Breeze Peak. The outer perimeter of Clear Breeze Peak was their last line of defense. Even if they couldn't trap Bai Yanqing for them, they could at least stall for time. Chu Tianyin strode in and cupped his fists in greeting Long Fei. "Your Highness." Leaving aside whether or not the 2 imprisoned Chu clan elders had pledged allegiance to Long Fei, Chu Tianyin had done so long ago. "Sit," Long Fei said. Chu Tianyin sat down next to Gu Beiwei and murmured, "Brother Gu, long time no see." "It's a good thing we can still meet," Gu Beiwei murmured back. His words revealed the grudges and grievances between the Nether and Shadow clans over the past few years. Long Fei and Chu Tianyin discussed the deployment of the Shadow Guard, so Chu Tianyin knew what to do with his archers. He hadn't found out anything about the Li clan's schemes in Western Zhou, nor did he have the face to ask Long Fei to see his father and uncle. He could only withdraw for now. By the 4th day, the Shadow Guard was in place. Tang Li's new batch of concealed weapons, the fire crossbows, were also in place. Everything was ready to go. On the morning of the 5th day, Chu Shifeng personally came with good news. "Your Highness, there's been a situation in the pine forest west of Clear Breeze Peak. A black-robed man came out of the woods and went down the mountain. This subordinate didn't dare chase after him," Chu Shifeng reported excitedly. Not chasing after him was the safest and wisest thing to do, because it was very likely that the man had gone down the mountain to get medicine. As long as he did that, he'd definitely come back up the mountain. "Excellent." Long Fei rose to his feet, a cold smile on his lips. Immediately after, Gu Beiwei, Gu, and Tang Li rose to their feet as well. Finally, it was their turn to wait for the hare to show up. Long Fei, Gu Beiwei, Gu, and Tang Li immediately headed for Clear Breeze Peak, leaving Chu Shifeng to wait for news at the medical academy. The four of them didn't stick together, but spread out on the four paths leading up Clear Breeze Peak. However, what was surprising was that they waited from morning till night, but they did not see a single person. Chu Shifeng didn't receive any news from the medical academy either. If the man had gone to get medicine outside the city, then he might not be back by the end of the night. Thus, they continued to wait. However, even after waiting until the evening of the next day, there was still no news at all. Everyone was still very calm and continued to keep watch without batting an eyelid. But on the third evening, there was still no news. By now, Gu and Tang Li were starting to lose their cool. Gu slipped away to find Gu Beiyue and said, "That person shouldn't have gone to get medicine. If we keep watching, we might as well go up the mountain to search." This was the first time Gu Beiyue had been so serious with Gu. "Cold," he said, "Seventh young master, don't be careless. Hurry and go back to keep watch. If you lose track of him, you'll have to bear the consequences." Gu was about to explain himself when Gu Beiyue knitted his brows. "Go back." Gu had no choice but to go back the way he'd come. At the same time, Tang Li ran to Long Fei Yi. Before he could speak, Long Fei Yi gave him a single word, "Scram." Tang Li didn't even dare to explain himself, but went back with his tail between his legs. The four of them and the shadow guard waited for an entire night. But on the fourth day, a black figure appeared in Gu Beiyue's line of sight. The sky was dim and the light wasn't good. Moreover, the figure was quite far away, so Gu Beiyue couldn't see clearly. But he was certain that the man was heading deeper into the forest. "Tell His Highness and the others that I'll chase after him if there's any movement." "Everyone, stay calm," Gu Beiyue said in a low voice before silently following the figure. Letting Gu Beiyue chase after the person was the safest bet. Gu Beiyue was not only fast, but his figure was also like a ghost. Even Bai Yanqing might not be able to find him. When this news reached Long Fei Ye's ears, Long Fei Ye's tense face finally relaxed a little. The shadow guard beside him also breathed a sigh of relief. For the past 3 days, following beside His Highness was the same as staying in a large ice cellar. They were constantly hoping that the princess would bring the little master who was still in his mother's womb back to melt the ice mountain that was His Highness. Long Fei Yi was absolutely assured that Gu Beiyue would do something. Sure enough, after 4 hours, Gu Beiyue returned. He whispered to Long Fei Yi, "We'll talk when we get back." Long Fei Yi left without another word. Tang Li and Gu quickly left after receiving the shadow guard's orders, returning to the medical academy. "There's a hole in a tree halfway up the mountain. That person jumped in through it," Gu Beiyue said seriously. "The underground palace." Long Fei Yi blurted out. There were 2 large mountain ranges in the Poison Sect's Forbidden Grounds. One was Clear Breeze Mountain, while the other was Monarch's Descent Mountain. Between these 2 mountains was where the Poison Sect's sacrificial altar was located. It was a very deep ravine and a very dense forest. They had already destroyed Monarch's Descent Mountain's underground palace. When they had entered Monarch's Descent Mountain's underground palace, they had also entered through a hole in a large tree. From the looks of it, Clear Breeze Mountain was the same as Monarch's Descent Mountain. There was also an underground palace hidden within the enormous mountain. At this moment, the shadow guard arrived with a prescription. "Young Master Beiyue." This came from the maternity clinic in the Acropolis 25 li away. Gu Beiyue glanced at it and picked out a medicine that had been used incorrectly. It was called cassia seed. If they hadn't made their previous conjectures, they probably would have wasted a lot of time and effort. But with their previous conjectures and today's discovery, they all knew that the Ming in cassia seed was the Ming of Clear Breeze Mountain. Everyone thought that this prescription was meaningless, but Gu Beiyue still managed to pick up on something. He said, "Although the 3 prescriptions use different ingredients, their effects are the same. The princess must be fine now and doesn't need to take any medicine. Otherwise, with 4th young Miss Ren's abilities, she wouldn't have been able to prescribe 3 different prescriptions in a row." This piece of news was more delightful than anything else. Long Fei Ye's heart, which had been hanging in the air, finally calmed down. "Brother, Let's kill our way over right now. Tang Li was extremely excited. Gu Qixiao stood up and said, "Call everyone over and surround the entire mountain for this old man." "That's right. Why don't we wait a few more days? I'll call everyone from the Tang sect over," Tang Li said in a hurry. In terms of excitement, Long Fei Yi was probably the most agitated. However, he still managed to keep his cool. He ignored Tang Li and Gu and said seriously, "If it's the underground palace, there must be another entrance." Chapter 11:20. As soon as Long Fei Yi finished speaking, Gu Beiwei interjected, "It should be on top of the cliff." "Your Highness, I'll go with you tonight to investigate." The agitated Gu finally remembered how he, Han Yunxi, and Long Fei Yi had been forced to the edge of a cliff in order to escape the fire. They'd almost fallen into the abyss. That was the first time in his life that someone had stayed by his side. He finally calmed down. Saving people didn't just require hot-bloodedness, but a calm heart as well. "Find all the exits and block them all," Gu ordered cold. This guy isn't the least bit stupid when he calms down. Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiwei had the exact same idea. Even if they sent all their men to surround Clear Breeze Peak, it still wasn't safe. After all, the mountain was too big to guard against. But if they could find all the exits of the underground palace and set up an ambush, they'd be able to do twice the work with half the effort. That night, Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiwei personally went to the Black Forest where the Poison Sect's sacrificial altar was and flew up to the cliff face of Clear Breeze Peak. Only people of Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiwei's caliber could fly up such a tall, impenetrable wall. On one hand, they had to be on guard against being discovered. On the other, they had to search for hidden caves and cliffs. They spent the whole night searching the immeasurably tall cliff that stretched for almost 1,000 meters and found that there was only one exit on the cliff. Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiwei didn't return to Medical City. Instead, they had Gu and Tang Li come with them. "Tang Li, you and Gu Beiwei will go in through this cave. Gu and I'll go up the mountain and enter through the tree hole. Remember, move out as soon as the sun rises," Long Fei Yi instructed. Although Tang Li's martial arts were average compared to theirs, Tang Li had plenty of hidden weapons that were impossible to guard against. Moreover, Ning Jing was here, so he had to save her personally. Long Fei Yi wasn't worried about leaving Tang Li to Gu Beiwei. Gu Beiwei's speed at evading attacks and escaping was unparalleled. It was impossible for him to hurt Bai Yanqing on his own, but it wouldn't be easy for Bai Yanqing to hurt or poison him either. Long Fei wasn't familiar with poisons, but with an undying Gu Qixiao by his side, it was enough to deal with Bai Yanqing's poisons. If they ran into Bai Yanqing, Gu would be in charge of keeping Bai Yanqing busy while he went to save the others. Splitting up was also a safety precaution. After all, both entrances could be guarded. If they were discovered, Bai Yanqing would be hard-pressed to deal with two people at once. As long as one of them kept Bai Yanqing busy, the other pair would have a chance to save the others or even launch a sneak attack. Long Fei also instructed Chu Shifeng to wait until daybreak for them to make their move. Then he'd immediately deploy all of his men at the foot of the mountain to lie in ambush at the two entrances, while maintaining the ambush outside Medical City. He left Tang Li to Gu Beiwei while he and Gu circled around the mountain. They snuck all the way to the tree hole that Gu Beiwei had discovered and set up an ambush. There were only 2 hours left before the sun rose. These 2 hours were the dark night before the arrival of the common people. For the four of them, this was the longest wait they'd ever had. For Long Fei Yi, what he was waiting for was Han Yunxi's confident smile and the little fellow in Han Yunxi's womb that he'd been waiting for the most. For Gu Beiwei, what he was waiting for was the accusation on his shoulders and the protection in his heart. For Gu, what he was waiting for was the phrase, "poison lass." For Tang Li, what he was waiting for was a confession that he owed Ning Jing a long time ago. A confession that he and Ning Jing shared the truest words between them. What were Han Yunxi and the rest doing now? Han Yunxi had already woken up. Although fourth young Miss Ren said she could get out of bed now, she was still very cautious and continued to lie flat all day. During the 3 months in the dark room, she hadn't been able to cultivate her poison storage space at all. She hadn't even been able to sense Lil Thing's existence. However, ever since she'd spread the news, she'd felt much more at ease. These days, she'd been lying down with nothing to do, so she'd been cultivating with her eyes closed. As soon as she calmed down, she'd immediately sense Lil Thing's existence and could even feel Lil Thing's irritable mood. Actually, there wasn't much room for improvement even if she cultivated now. She just wanted to cultivate a little more so that she could be a little closer to advancing. What was the turning point for advancement? Fourth young Miss Run had been anxious at first, but after a few days, she'd gotten used to life here and was now sound asleep. Ning Jing was locked up alone in a secret room. Previously, Su Xiaoyu had cheated by yanching out of good food and a lot of nourishing herbs. If she hadn't rested for a few days, who knew if she would have died in the forest at Tiger's prison? Later, Bai Yanqing found out that Su Xiaoyu didn't know the whereabouts of the perplexing butterfly illusion, and the two of them had almost been killed. Even with a knife on their necks, Su Xiaoyu still believed that Bai Yanqing wouldn't kill them. She didn't understand at the time, but now it seemed that Bai Yanqing had already planned to kidnap Han Yunqi back then. He'd wanted to use the two of them to threaten Han Yunqi to be obedient. Although she was still alive, she was still very weak. She couldn't even stand for a little longer. She'd faint, and her legs were especially sore. She leaned against the corner and gently licked her teeth. She was extremely disappointed. She'd almost forgotten how she'd dressed up as a man before she got married, and how high-spirited she'd been. However, she didn't regret meeting Tang Li, nor did she regret giving birth to Tang Li's daughter. Apart from missing Tang Li, she missed her daughter even more. She'd only held her daughter a few times ever since she'd been born. Newborns were different every day. It had already been a few months. What had her daughter become? Could it be that she couldn't recognize her? Had her daughter started to recognize people? Did she still remember being hugged and fed by her mother? Did she still remember that she had a mother? Every night, Ning Jing's mind would appear that tender little face. She couldn't help but cry. She cried until her heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys were broken. Su Xiaoyu was actually locked up next to Ning Jing's. The stone room was sealed, so she couldn't hear Ning Jing's cries. She also didn't know that Ning Jing was right next to her. Compared to Ning Jing's disappointment, she was in a very good state. She firmly believed that her master had the ability to send the news out. At the same time, she'd begun to think about how to use Bai Yanqing's immortal body to research new torture methods after capturing Bai Yanqing. She wouldn't be satisfied until she'd researched hundreds and thousands of torture methods. Of course, before researching new torture methods, she had to let Ning Jing take her revenge and let Bai Yanqing have a taste of having his teeth pulled out. With Su Xiaoyu's temper and personality, there was no telling if anyone would dare to marry her when she grew up. In this underground palace, there were two other people who were imprisoned. One was Mu Qingwu, while the other was Duanmu Yao. Ever since Mu Qingwu was kidnapped, he'd been locked up in 3 different places before ending up in this underground palace. Even now, he had no idea who had kidnapped him or that Cloud Realm continent had already experienced war and peace. Nor did he know that his Mu family was a descendant of the Li clan. Because of their past mistakes and his father's wrath, the Li clan had been destroyed by the Long Fei Yi. Now, even the Li clan members who'd escaped didn't dare to reveal their identities for fear of becoming public enemies. Mu Qingwu had lived a magnanimous, independent, and upright life. If he knew the cruel truth and the unbearable past of his own clan, how would he feel? Besides the people who delivered his 3 meals a day, no one else had come to visit him since he was imprisoned. He'd asked countless times who his kidnappers were and why, but the people who delivered his meals never said a word. After so long, he almost felt like a hostage who'd been forgotten by the kidnappers. That's right, Mu Qingwu had lost all value to Bai Yanqing. Fortunately, he was forgotten. Otherwise, Bai Yanqing would have ordered people to cut off all 3 meals a day. Mu Qingwu would have starved to death. Duanmu Yao had been forgotten as well. If she had any brains at all, she wouldn't have handed 3rd honored elder over to Bai Yanqing. Unfortunately, she had no brains at all. Now that the heretical sword sect had been destroyed and Celestial Mountain restored order, what use did she have to Bai Yanqing? After she handed third honored elder over to Bai Yanqing and her men in the capital kidnapped Mu Qingwu, she became one of Bai Yanqing's discarded pawns. When Bai Yanqing locked up Han Yunxi in this underground palace, she stupidly asked Bai Yanqing to hand over Han Yunxi to her. From then on, she was locked up in a secret room. No matter how much she kicked up a fuss, Bai Yanqing never saw her again. If Bai Yanqing hadn't forgotten about her, she would have starved to death long ago. She didn't know whether it was a blessing or a curse that she hadn't starved to death. Currently, Bai Yanqing was drinking wine with Hao San in the stone room next to Han Yunxi's room. Master, what do you plan to do once Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi turn against each other? Hao San had been hiding this question in his heart for a long time. His master had lived his entire life for the sake of love and hatred, but he'd never made any plans for himself. Bai Yanqing didn't reply, but poured the entire cup of wine into his mouth before slamming it against the stone table. Although he ignored Hao San, the man's question stirred up great waves in his heart. After taking revenge on Mu Xian's daughter and Mu Xian, what then? What else could he do? If he didn't die or perish, where would he go in the endless years to come? Hao San hesitated for a long time before he probed. Master, once Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi kill each other and die, there'll be no master left in this world. Hao San had always hoped that his master could seize the world so he could enjoy a high official salary, glory, splendor, wealth, and rank above all others. Hao San's hint was so obvious, but it was a pity that Bai Yanqing didn't take it to heart. He sneered, only a masterless world is interesting. A masterless world would be a world of war, destitute and homeless, plagues and plagues, where the people had no way to make a living. A trace of helplessness flashed past Hao San's eyes, but he didn't make a sound. At this moment, the sky outside was already bright and the sun had risen. Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiyue and Tang Li entered the underground palace almost at the same time. Not long after they entered the underground palace, they met with the first obstacle, which was exactly the same. This obstacle was Chapter 1121. The obstacle Long Fei Yi, Gu Beiyue, and Tang Li encountered was none other than the same formation that trapped them last time. As soon as they jumped into the tree hole, Gu sensed that something was wrong after walking a short distance. He said, "It's the 10-sided ambush formation." Because he was tricked by the art of Chimenduanjia last time, Gu specifically went to learn this secret technique. Although he did not learn it for a long time, his skill level was not bad. At least he could distinguish the type of formation within 100 steps. Once he identified the formation, he could start looking for a way to break it. Gu stopped Long Fei Yi. Don't go. It'll be futile even if you continue. Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi did not stop. Instead, he continued walking forward. He said, the southwest direction is the death gate. The 10-sided ambush formation has 91 life gates. The death gate is the life gate. It's the exit. As soon as he said this, Gu was stunned. The art of Chimenduanjia had 8 gates. They were rest, life, injury, limit, view, death, alarm, and open. The corresponding array formations also had these 8 doors and 8 directions. Different dangers were hidden in the 8 directions. Generally speaking, the opening, rest, and life gates were auspicious. The death, alarm, and injury gates were ominous. The limit gate and view gate were neutral. Those who knew the secret technique might not be able to break the formation because they would often make mistakes in judgment and mistake the death gate for the life gate. Once they walked in, the consequences would be unimaginable, and some tricky formations would reverse life and death. Life was death, and death was life. Gu was puzzled. When did Long Fei Yi learn the art of Chimenduanjia and the 9 Palaces 8 trigrams formation? Hadn't he been killing enemies on the battlefield for the past 3 months? He was actually better at learning than him. They had only walked a short distance, and he could already tell that the death gate was the life gate. Gu was stunned in place. Long Fei Yi had already walked far away. He did not answer or stop. Instead, he said sternly, "Hurry up." In a formation, the most taboo thing was to separate. Last time, they had suffered a great loss because they had accidentally separated. Just as Long Fei Yi and Gu came out of the gate of life of the formation, Gu Beiyue and Tang Li also came out of the formation. Gu Beiyue also went to learn the art of Qimen Duanjia. His level should be on par with Long Fei Yi. Just as they were breaking the array, Bai Yanqing immediately sensed that the array had been broken. He stood up in shock and said coldly, "Someone broke in." Last night, when the attendant came back with the medicine, he personally changed the arrays at the two entrances. Now that both arrays were broken, it proved that someone had broken into both entrances. "Master, who has such great ability to break your array?" Hao San was also very surprised. He added, "Long Fei Yi and the others don't know Qimen Duanjia." Bai Yanqing had considered this point as well, but who else could find this place besides them? Did they come here on purpose or by mistake? Although Bai Yanqing was shocked, he didn't panic. Even if they broke the array at the entrance, they might not be able to find their way here. If they came down from the tree hole, they would have to pass through a massive maze. If they came down from the cliff, they would have to face over 20 different paths. If they chose the right path, they'd reach this place. If they chose the wrong one, they'd end up in a maze. The reason he chose Clear Breeze Peak as his hiding place was because it had the most convenient conditions. It had the largest maze in all of Cloud Realm continent. This was the most hidden area of the Poison Sect's Forbidden Grounds. Bai Yanqing was still waiting calmly. He was more willing to believe that someone had broken in by mistake because he refused to believe that Long Fei Yi and the others could learn Qimen Duanjia in such a short time, much less break through his own array. But soon enough, the attendant rushed in to report, "Master, it's Long Fei Yi and the others. They've found their way here." Bai Yanqing was truly stunned by the news. "Who broke the array? Who?" he asked loudly. Qimen Duanjia was the foundation of the Wind Clan's foundation. It was their most proficient secret. Outsiders could learn Qimen Duanjia, but very few could break through the Wind Clan's arrays. How did Long Fei Yi and the others do it? Long Fei Yi and Gu are together. They came down from the tree hole and have already entered the maze. Gu Beiyue and Tang Li are together. They came in from the cliff and are still standing at the entrances to the 20 paths. This subordinate doesn't know who broke the array either, the attendant reported. Bai Yanqing was shocked by the news, but he quickly shifted his attention from the array to the prescription. It had been 3 months, but Long Fei Yi and the others still hadn't found their way here. Only after the prescription had been sent out did they find their way. It was obvious that the prescription was the one who sent out the news. He walked out of the stone room angrily and personally pushed open the door to the room where Han Yunxi was locked up. Han Yunxi had just sat up with the help of fourth young Miss Ren. She was stunned when she saw Bai Yanqing rushing in with a furious expression. Then, she held fourth young Miss Ren's hand tightly and thought to herself, "Oh no." It seemed that the prescription had been discovered. Bai Yanqing wouldn't do anything to her, but fourth young Miss Ren was in danger. "Stupid girl, you're so capable." Bai Yanqing walked closer. Han Yunxi got off the bed and shielded fourth young Miss Ren behind her. She glanced at the open stone door and prepared to escape with fourth young Miss Ren. If they didn't escape, fourth young Miss Ren would definitely die here. If Bai Yanqing was willing to talk to her in the small dark room, she would have found a chance to escape long ago. But now, she had to be careful with fourth young Miss Ren. It was impossible to say that she wasn't panicking. However, no matter how panicked she was, she forced herself to calm down and think of a solution in the face of fourth young Miss Ren, who had helped her a lot. "Tell me, how did you send out the news?" Bai Yanqing questioned angrily. Han Yunxi was shocked when she heard this. She originally thought that Bai Yanqing had discovered the word game on the prescription, but after hearing what Bai Yanqing said, he didn't decipher the word game. So Long Fei Yi and the rest had found their way here? Han Yunxi could suppress her panic, but she couldn't suppress her ecstasy. Long Fei Yi and the rest had finally arrived. She knew that he would definitely be able to decipher the word game. He definitely could. It was this piece of good news that made Han Yunxi even more determined to escape from this secret room. She held forth young Miss Ren with one hand and covered her lower abdomen with the other as she faced Bai Yanqing, who was approaching her step by step. She thought anxiously, "What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Tell me." Bai Yanqing was furious. He had been fooled again. If he hadn't been cautious and set up arrays at both entrances, he might not have known that Long Fei Yi and the rest had sneaked in. Han Yunshi had an idea and replied, "That's the method my father taught me." Actually, Han Yunshi didn't know whether her biological father had passed away or not. She had no choice but to take a gamble. If her biological father had passed away, then she would have to think of another way. If her biological father hadn't passed away, then this would be an excellent way to provoke Bai Yanqing. Bai Yanqing had pretended to be her biological father and had a lot of resentment towards her mother. If she guessed correctly, Bai Yanqing and her mother must have had some sort of love and hate entanglement. Only love could confuse a person's heart, and only hatred could destroy a person's heart. Her biological father was Bai Yanqing's love rival, so everything about her biological father was Bai Yanqing's greatest weakness. Han Yunshi's heart was in her throat. If she made the wrong bet, she really didn't know what else she could use to provoke Bai Yanqing. Fourth young Mistress Ren hid behind Han Yunshi. Although she didn't know what was going on, she could clearly feel Han Yunshi's nervousness. Bai Yanqing suddenly stopped in his tracks. Han Yunshi's heart skipped a beat, and she became even more nervous. Her palms were sweating. Bai Yanqing narrowed his eyes and stared at Han Yunshi. Han Yunshi clenched her fists and forced herself to stay calm. She looked at him calmly and fearlessly. "You, father?" Bai Yanqing finally spoke. Han Yunshi couldn't figure out what he was questioning in his tone. Was he questioning whether she was lying or questioning the word game that her father had taught her in the prescription? Han Yunshi didn't know the situation and didn't dare to answer carelessly. She stared vigilantly at Bai Yanqing and confronted him. Unexpectedly, Bai Yanqing suddenly sneered. No wonder you don't believe that I'm your father." Han Yunshi was overjoyed when she heard this. It seemed that she had made the right bet again. Although she didn't know whether Bai Yanqing knew about her father's whereabouts or whether he was alive. However, she had already hooked Bai Yanqing. She took out a piece of jade from her sleeve, held it tightly in her hand, and raised it high. "Bai Yanqing, make a guess. Where did this 10,000-year-old corpse jade come from?" she asked with a sneer. The real corpse jade had already been melted into a poisonous teardrop by her perplexing butterfly illusion. It was given to her by the Mu family's Madame Lianxin. Madame Mu Xin had given it to Madame Lianxin in order to help Han Kongan become a director of the medical academy. Madame Lianxin had wanted to use this piece of 10,000-year-old corpse jade to blackmail her and lie to her that she knew her father's identity. In reality, Madame Lianxin only knew that this piece of corpse jade was a love token that Han Yunshi's father had given to Mu Xin. She didn't know anything else. Because the corpse jade was a direct descendant of the poison sect, Madame Lianxin had deduced that Han Yunshi had the poison sect bloodline. Han Yunshi didn't know who her father was, much less the relationship between him and Bai Yanqing. However, she was certain that her father was also a direct descendant of the poison sect, so he might be related to Bai Yanqing by blood. Between the two of them, who had the right to inherit the position of the poison sect's sect head, something as good as the 10,000-year-old corpse jade had to be in the hands of the sect head. Bai Yanqing would definitely recognize the 10,000-year-old corpse jade. Han Yunshi wrapped the jade completely in her palms so that not a speck of it was exposed. However, the name 10,000-year-old corpse jade was enough to drive Bai Yanqing crazy. "Great! So this thing ended up in your hands." Bai Yanqing roared. Han Yunshi's eyes flashed cunningly as she snorted. "This is a love token my father gave my mother, so it's only natural that it ended up in my hands. When I see Long Fei Yi, I'll give it to him." Bai Yanqing wanted her to turn against Long Fei Yi, right? Then she'll show him how lovey-dovey they are. That's old man's thing. Give it back to old man. Bai Yanqing suddenly roared in rage. Han Yunshi knew that her chance had come. She grabbed forth young Miss Ren's hand and sent the jade flying into the bed. "I won't give it to you even if it's ruined." Bai Yanqing didn't even think as he lunged forward to snatch it. At the same time, Han Yunxi pulled forth young Miss Ren out of the stone room as fast as she could. Chapter 1122. By the time Han Yunxi pulled forth young Miss Ren out of the stone room, Bai Yanqing had already thrown himself onto the bed to grab the jade, only to discover that it wasn't the 10,000-year corpse jade at all. "Stop her!" Bai Yanqing roared, then turned to chase after her. But Han Yunxi had already crippled Hao San's legs with her poison and was running towards the dark passage on the right. The light was coming from the left, which meant that they would reach a cliff if they went left. Below that cliff was very likely the black forest where the poisoned sex sacrificial altar was. Han Yunxi had realized this as soon as she'd been brought out of the little black room. But this time, she didn't hesitate to run to the right. She'd already made all sorts of plans when she was locked in the stone room. She'd seriously considered which direction to run in if she could escape. The left looked beautiful, but it was incomparably dangerous. Bai Yanqing definitely wouldn't trap them so close to the exit. Just because they could see the light didn't mean they could escape easily. In fact, it meant danger was close by. She guessed that Bai Yanqing must have set up an array on the left. She didn't want to be trapped again as soon as she escaped. Her smartest choice was to go right. As long as she wasn't trapped, she'd have a chance to escape. If Clear Breeze Mountain's underground palace was similar to Monarch's Descent Mountains, then the other exit should be upwards through the tree hole. Han Yunxi killed 5 or 6 guards with her poison before quickly disappearing into the darkness. By the time Bai Yanqing chased after her, she was already nowhere to be seen. He was about to give chase when Hao San grabbed his leg. "Master, save me." Hao San was both skilled in martial arts and poison, but he was no match for Han Yunxi. He'd just exchanged a blow with Han Yunxi and was immediately injured by her poison needles. The poison was so painful that he couldn't stand. He didn't know what kind of poison it was, but he knew that not only would his legs be crippled, but all the bones in his body would be crippled. In the end, he wouldn't be able to escape death. He could only hope that his master would cure him of the poison. Scram! Bai Yanqing was angry and anxious. How could he care about Hao San, who knew that Hao San would not let go of him? He was not hugging his master, but his own life. If he loosened his grip, he would lose his life. "Scram! Do you hear me?" Bai Yanqing roared as he stared at the darkness to his right, his heart burning with anxiety. Long Fei Yi and the others had already entered the maze. If the two of them bumped into them, he would have to expend a lot of effort to bring them away. He could not die, but that did not mean that he could not feel pain or injuries. He was very clear that there was a huge gap between his martial arts and Long Fei Yi's. "Master, this old servant has followed you and your family for many years. Even if I have not made any contributions, I have worked hard." This old servant, before Hao San could finish speaking, Bai Yanqing's palm struck down on his head. "Useless thing." Blood immediately flowed out from Hao San's scalp and flowed down his face. Hao San never thought that he would end up like this. But he should have thought of it earlier, shouldn't he? Hadn't Jun Yixie and Bai Yuqiao followed Bai Yanqing for so many years? They had followed him since they were young. Weren't they still kicked away by Bai Yanqing? This person was crazy and had no humanity to speak of. Raising his head to look at Bai Yanqing, Jun Yixie's face suddenly appeared in Hao San's mind. He finally regretted it. The person he should have been most loyal to was not Bai Yanqing, but Jun Yixie. If he had been enlightened at that time, he would not have ended up in this state today. Everything would have been different. Even though he was seriously injured, Hao San did not let go of Bai Yanqing's leg. He hugged it tightly and raised his head to look at Bai Yanqing. "You? And no wonder Muexian did not want you that year." "Ha!" Bai Yanqing was enraged. When he heard this, he suddenly bent down and grabbed Hao San's collar. He pulled him up fiercely and questioned, "Why? What do you mean? Tell me. Why did she not want me? Tell me. Tell me." Blood continued to flow down. Hao San's entire face was covered in blood. Coldly, he smiled. As he smiled, his smile stopped, and his expression froze. Dead, Bai Yanqing was suddenly stunned. He seemed to have just realized that Hao San was dead. He had killed him with his own hands. Hao San had followed him for more than 30 years, right? When he was with Mu Xin, Hao San had been following him. He had so many subordinates, but only Hao San knew about his and Mu Xin's past. Hao San was the one who understood the feud between him and Mu Xin. Hao San was also the only one who could drink with him to relieve his boredom. Why? Bai Yanqing suddenly let go. Hao San fell to the ground, motionless. He was really dead. Why? Why did she not want me? Why? Tell me. Tell me. As Bai Yanqing asked, he looked at his palm. Suddenly, regret and sadness surfaced in his heart. However, he quickly ignored it. No, he deserved to die. If he hadn't stopped her, Han Yunxi definitely wouldn't have been able to escape. He deserved to die. Bai Yanqing didn't delay any longer. He turned and chased after Han Yunxi to the right. At this moment, Long Fei Yi and Gu were already in the maze. Gu Beiyue and Tang Li were still hesitating in front of the 20 stone doors. They didn't know which one to take. They walked in from the cave on the cliff. After breaking the array, they saw a row of 20 stone doors. Inside each stone door was a bottomless passageway. The deeper they went, the darker it became. Back in Monarch Descent Mountain, they'd encountered a similar layout. Different doors had different dangers, and all of them led to dead ends. There was only one path that led to the end. Back then, Gu Beiyue had been hiding in the shadows. He'd clearly seen how arrogant the Duanmu siblings were, and how Han Yunxi had tricked them. It was also that time that Duanmu Yao bore a grudge against Han Yunxi. But that time, they'd only faced a few doors. Now, there were 20. Tang Clan head, please wait here. I'll try them one by one. Gu Beiyue made his final decision. Tang Li immediately stopped him. No, it's too dangerous. Although Gu Beiyue was fast enough to escape, what if there were poisonous miasma or other poisonous creatures inside? This was the poison sect. Although this was a big risk to begin with, they couldn't take such a huge risk right at the entrance. They had to wait for Bai Yanqing to show up first. They didn't know that Bai Yanqing's subordinates were watching them from the shadows, so they didn't send a shadow guard over. They were also afraid that too many people would cause too much of a commotion and expose themselves. It's fine, Gu Beiyue said seriously. No, if you're poisoned, what will I do? Well, take me in. Tang Li countered. Tang Clan head, we can't delay any longer. His Highness and the others should have already gone in, Gu Beiyue said seriously. If possible, he didn't want to take such a risk here. Moreover, there were 19 dangers ahead. How long will it take you to go through all of them? Tang Li asked seriously. I don't know the depth, so it's hard to say, Gu Beiyue replied honestly. Go back to the medical academy and bring back a cage of rats. How does that sound? Tang Li took out a hidden weapon as he spoke. As soon as he saw Gu's hidden weapon, Gu Beiyue's calm eyes lit up. That's a good idea. With his speed, going back and forth to the medical academy was a very fast thing. This mountain was right behind the medical academy. Tang Li and Gu Beiyue retreated to the bottom of the cliff. Tang Li and the shadow guard stood guard below, while Gu Beiyue rushed to the medical academy. Soon enough, they brought 2 large cages of rats back to the 20th door. The medical academy was using rats for research and had raised a large group of them. They had as many as they wanted. Gu Beiyue had brought a large cage of over 20 of them crammed into each other. Seeing that the mouths of the rats had been sealed, Tang Li couldn't help but admire Gu Beiyue's meticulousness and speed. Tang Li took out a hidden needle. This needle was different from other hidden weapons. There was a thin thread on the needle. He didn't know what material it was made of, but it was colorless and transparent. Although it was thin, it was hard. If he didn't look at it closely, he wouldn't be able to see it. Gu Beiyue deliberately pulled on the thin thread, but he couldn't break it. This is called a needle and thread. It's used to delay people. The needle is very ordinary, but the thread is unique to the Tang sect. It's called a hidden thread. A few elders of the Tang sect came up with it. It was just developed last month. They gave each of the Shadow Guard 3 needles. If we don't catch Bai Yanqing and he escapes, as long as someone can shoot him, they can at least follow him for a while and delay him. Tang Li explained in a low voice as he pierced the back of the rats with the hidden needles. Although it was a stab wound, it wasn't fatal. Instead, it frightened the rats and made them struggle. Tang Li placed the rats in front of the first door. The rats ran forward as if they were running for their lives. As the rats ran, Tang Li released the thin thread around his wrist. Soon, the thread stopped moving. Tang Li hurriedly dragged the rats back. When the rats came out of the cave, Gu Beiwei and Tang Li both gasped. "Oh my God, Gu Beiwei, I saved your life." The rats were already dead. They didn't know what poison they were poisoned with, but their heads and faces were unrecognizable. In such a short time, they didn't hear any movement in the cave. God knows what kind of poison was in there. God knows how the rats were poisoned. "Do you still have a needle and thread?" Gu Beiwei asked. Tang Li hurriedly gave him one. The two of them divided the work and used this method to test every entrance. Soon, they had 19 dead rats. Some of the rats were bitten by unknown things. When they were dragged out, only half of their bodies were left. These caves were dangerous to begin with. Just the poisonous miasma that Bai Yanqing set up was enough to make them suffer. It had to be said that Tang Li was right to be cautious this time. The 19 caves were all dead ends and were all sealed. Therefore, Bai Yanqing had already set up a poisonous miasma. No matter how fast Gu Beiwei was, he would definitely be poisoned as soon as he entered. Only the last door was left. Tang Li sighed in relief. It should be this way. Gu Beiwei still took a rat to experiment. The rat ran into the cave for a long time before the hidden threads chasing after it stopped. In the end, all the hidden threads were used up. Gu Beiwei had no choice but to drag the rat back. When he pulled it back, the rat was still alive and well. This is the way. It can't be wrong. Tang Li was overjoyed. Gu Beiwei didn't dare to delay any longer. He used his qin gong and flew in with Tang Li. However, they didn't go far before they encountered a formation. Fortunately, Gu Beiwei spent the past 3 months in the Tian, an imperial capital, and learned the art of Chimenduanjia. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come today. After the first array formation was broken, another array formation appeared. In just one passage, Bai Yanqing set up a total of 5 formations. Han Yunqi didn't choose this path. Sure enough, it was the right choice. Such a tight formation made Gu Qishao guess that it was very likely to lead to a prisoner's prison. When they broke the 5th formation and walked out of the passage, they saw from afar. Chapter 11:23. Gu Beiwei and Tang Li saw Hao San's corpse from afar. The two of them strode over and saw even more clearly that Hao San had been struck in the head with a palm and was forcibly shaken to death. Neither of them knew Hao San, but they were sure that he was Bai Yanqing's subordinate. "It doesn't look like my brother and Gu's handiwork. They can't be that fast," Tang Li muttered to himself as he squatted down to check. Gu noticed that the blood flowing out of Hao San was very strange. He quickly grabbed Tang Li's hand and said, "Be careful. He might have been poisoned. Could it be my sister-in-law?" Tang Li was shocked. "It's possible," Gu Beiwei said seriously. They really did not think that Bai Yanqing would kill his subordinate. "So, did my sister-in-law escape?" Tang Li asked again. Gu Beiwei had already found the stone room with the door open. He said, "To be exact, she should be escaping." He walked into the stone room, and Tang Li quickly followed. They found a medicine pot in the stone room and some medicinal herbs that had not been decocted yet. Gu Beiwei took a look at the medicinal herbs and immediately confirmed, "The princess is trapped here. She must have left not long ago." The dregs in the medicine hut had not been cleaned up, so he estimated the time it took for the decoction to be decocted. Based on the time of Hao San's death, it must have been just now. They mistakenly thought that Hao San was killed by Han Yunqi. It could be considered a coincidence. Gu Beiwei and Tang Li looked at each other. They did not say anything and rushed out of the door at the same time. There were only 2 paths here. One was to the left, which led to the passage to the cliff. The other was to the right. It was dark, and they could not see where it led to. Needless to say, Han Yunqi must have escaped to the right. Otherwise, she would have been trapped in the formation. Gu Beiwei and Tang Li chased to the right. They did not go far before they saw several corpses. They were all poisoned to death, and they died not long ago. As a result, they were even more convinced that Han Yunqi had just escaped from a stone room. What a coincidence. If she had escaped a little later, she would have bumped into them. Soon, Tang Li and Gu Biyue's figures disappeared into the darkness of the passage. At first, they were still walking straight ahead. Later on, they encountered a fork in the road. The original road split into two. They did not know which path to choose, so they could only choose one path. But who would have thought that after walking for a while, they would come across two crossroads? They had no choice but to continue to choose one path. After a while, Gu Beiwei realized something was off. Tang Li, let's turn back. There's something wrong with this path. Formation? Tang Li also found it strange. Why were they still in the passage after walking for so long? The stone walls on both sides were very similar. They could not tell if they had walked this path before. It might be a maze. I hope it's not. Gu Beiwei said seriously. Gu Beiwei left a mark. He and Tang Li turned back to the original path and changed to another intersection. Who knew that after walking for half a day, they would actually see the mark they left behind? It's a maze, Tang Li said angrily. Don't stop. Keep walking. If the princess was not caught by Yanqing, she should also be in the maze. Maybe we can meet her, Gu Beiwei said seriously. His words immediately cheered Tang Li up. His sister-in-law might be with Ning Jing. Perhaps his sister-in-law knew where Ning Jing was locked up. Tang Li and Gu Beiwei walked in circles in the maze. At the same time, Long Fei Yi and Gu were also walking in circles. Gu had always been impatient. He handed over Immerse's sword. Let's just break these stone walls. Long Fei Yi glared at him coldly. You'll have to bear the consequences if you act rashly and alert the enemy. Gu hurriedly put away Immerse's sword. Then what should we do? Perhaps by Yanqing's watching us from the shadows and laughing at us? Long Fei Yi looked at him and said, If you're impatient, then get out. You. Gu was furious. If he was impatient, would he have waited until now? Long Fei Yi ignored him and did not continue walking. Instead, he sat down cross-legged on the spot. They had already walked a few rounds. They had been walking around the same spot. After going around in circles, they returned to the same spot. Instead of walking in circles and wasting their energy, it was better to sit down and think of a strategy before taking action. Seeing Long Fei Yi sit down, Gu looked like he wanted to say something. However, he hesitated for a moment and turned his head to the other side, ignoring him, quarreling at the slightest disagreement and Cold War at the slightest disagreement. This was probably referring to the two of them. Gu sat down not far away from Long Fei Yi and began to think about how to get out of this maze. He thought that there was a trick, but Long Fei Yi had already confirmed that with their abilities, there was no trick to getting out of this maze. They could only eliminate the obstacles one by one. Long Fei Yi suddenly turned to look at Gu. Hey! Gu immediately looked over and narrowed his eyes at him without saying a word. Stay guard. I need to think. Long Fei Yi's tone was no different from an order. What are you thinking about? Gu asked again. Just how much did Long Fei dislike talking to Gu Qixiao? If he could avoid talking, he would try his best not to. If he had to, he would also not talk about it. He didn't answer Gu. Instead, he leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. Gu only felt that his bottom line had been challenged. However, in order to save Poison Lass, he had no choice but to endure it. He secretly swore that in the future, he would speak less with Long Fei Yi. If Long Fei Yi asked him anything, he would exchange his own life for his own. Long Fei Yi closed his eyes and seriously recalled the paths and intersections that they had just walked through. Since they had entered the maze, they had gone around in circles and returned to their original spot 6 times. In these 6 times, they had not gone one round, and they had met 7 to 8 three-way intersections. Once they chose a junction, they would face 7 to 8 more intersections. If they didn't choose one of the intersections, they would face 5 to 6 more intersections. Sometimes the intersections would lead back to the original junction. Sometimes they would walk a few rounds before coming back. In short, it was very complicated. Long Fei Yi carefully recalled the paths they had taken. After thinking for a long time, he suddenly bit his finger and used his blood to draw a map on the ground. Seeing this, Gu was astonished and immediately came over to take a look. He saw that Long Fei Yi had drawn a few hexagons on the ground that were close to each other. It looked like a beehive. Gu couldn't understand it, no matter how he looked at it. Long Fei Ye's eyes were cold as he stared at it seriously. He didn't know what he was thinking about. Gu waited for a while, but Long Fei Yi didn't make a sound. Hence, he threw his lofty aspirations to the back of his mind and asked anxiously, "What happened to you? What are you drawing?" Long Fei Yi ignored him and continued to focus on the bloodstains on the ground. If he guessed correctly, the maze in the underground palace should be a beehive maze. It was made up of countless hexagons. The 6 corners of each hexagon were 3-way intersections. The maze was very big, so sometimes they went astray and took a long detour before coming back. Other times, they didn't go astray and walked a small detour before coming back. When they took a big detour and came back from a different direction, they couldn't see the sign from before. When they took a small detour, they could see the sign after going back from where they came from. If it was confirmed that it was a beehive maze, Long Fei Yi naturally had a way to solve it. However, he couldn't be completely sure. Hence, he still had to walk a few more rounds and do a few more experiments. Long Fei Yi got up. He didn't bother to greet Gu and walked forward. Gu had no choice but to follow him with a gloomy face. While Gu Beiwei and Tang Li were walking in circles and Long Fei Yi and Gu were doing experiments, Bai Yanqing was looking for Han Yunxi everywhere. Yes, although Bai Yanqing knew how to get out of the maze, he couldn't completely control the entire maze. After all, the maze was too big and there were several levels. He didn't have enough manpower. Han Yunxi and 4th young mistress Ren disappeared after entering the maze. Bai Yanqing and several guards couldn't find them. The more Bai Yanqing searched, the more irritable he became. The entrance formations on both sides had been broken. If Han Yunxi met Long Fei Yi and the others, and they escaped, how much effort would he have to put in to catch them again? After Bai Yanqing's search around the maze, he finally stopped and said coldly, "Go and bring Ning Jing and Su Xiaoyu out for Old Man." These 2 hostages could still be put to good use. Bai Yanqing quickly disappeared into the maze. After an hour, Long Fei Yi was completely sure that this maze was a beehive maze. He took the initiative to tell Gu, "This maze has many levels. It's a man-made beehive with many exits. However, this kind of maze usually has many traps. It's safer to hide the hostages inside the maze than behind it. We should be at the top level now. There's no other way but to go down level by level. Remember, don't act rashly and alert the enemy." Looking for them floor by floor, based on Long Fei Ye's estimation of this maze, coupled with his and Gu's speed, they should be able to walk through every path in about 2 days and 2 nights. Who knew? Just as Long Fei Yi and Gu were about to move forward, a familiar voice suddenly came from the right. This voice was a sharp woman's cry, as if she had been greatly frightened. Ning Jing. Long Fei Yi recognized this voice. He had heard it once in General Mu's residence. Right. Gu immediately identified the source of the voice. The 2 were about to go over. Who knew that another scream would come? It was actually Su Xiaoyu's voice. Left. Long Fei Yi said. What happened? Why were Ning Jing and Su Xiaoyu on the left and right sides of the maze? Why did they scream at the same time? Where was Han Yunxi? Gu and Long Fei Yi had a rare tacit understanding. The 2 of them stood still and waiting for Han Yunxi's voice. However, they waited for a long time and did not hear Han Yunxi's voice. Instead, they heard Ning Jing and Su Xiaoyu shouting a few times on the left and right sides. Their voices were so loud that it resounded through the entire maze. God knew what they had experienced. At this moment, Gu Beiwei and Tang Li, who were far away at the other end of the maze, also heard the voices. Tang Li did not hesitate to chase in the direction of Ning Jing's voice. Gu Beiwei had no choice but to chase after him and lead him forward quickly. Long Fei Yi and Gu were really calm. They waited for a while. When they did not hear Han Yunxi's voice, Long Fei Yi said, "Let's find Su Xiaoyu first." Su Xiaoyu and Ning Jing were in trouble. Something might have happened to Han Yunxi as well. The voices were so loud that Tang Li must have gone to find Ning Jing. Therefore, they could only choose Su Xiaoyu. They ran very fast, afraid that the voices would stop. Unexpectedly, Not only did the screams not stop, but they also continued. Finally, Long Fei stopped. It's a trap. Chapter 1124. It's a trap. There were sounds of hostages in both directions, and it was continuous. It didn't seem like Bai Yanqing was torturing the hostages. Instead, it seemed like he was deliberately making the hostages make sounds. Otherwise, why would he imprison them in different directions in the maze? And torture them at the same time? If there were only one or two shouts, perhaps Long Fei you wouldn't have thought so much. The shouts continued, and they were probably interrogating someone. As soon as Long Fei said it was a trap, Gu Qixiao stopped as well. He felt that something was off as well. Long Fei, this isn't a plan to lure the snake out of its hole, right? Who is he trying to lure out? Long Fei asked. Gu leaned back against the wall and crossed his arms. He slowly narrowed his eyes and looked at Long Fei. Judging from his posture, he seemed to have guessed something. But unexpectedly, he said to Long Fei, "What do you think?" Long Fei had the urge to throw this guy to Tang Li and get Gu Beiwen instead. He didn't answer Gu. Instead, he said, "Go to Ningjing quick." If Bai Yanqing wanted to lure the snake out of its hole, there were only two possibilities. The first was that Bai Yanqing already knew that they had barged in, but because of the size of the maze, he couldn't find them. The second possibility was what he hoped for the most, and that was that Han Yunxi had escaped from Bai Yanqing's restraints. Bai Yanqing could only use the hostages in his hands to threaten Han Yunxi again. No matter which possibility it was, they would be luring the snake out of its hole if they endured it to the end, so their best option was to ignore it. As long as Bai Yanqing didn't achieve his goal, he would definitely not let the hostages die. However, they had to hurry over to Ningjing now, because Tang Li would definitely not be able to hold himself back. Gu Beiwei wouldn't be able to persuade Tang Li either. At this moment, Tang Li and Gu Beiwei were probably chasing after Ningjing's shouts. Instead of letting the two of them face Bai Yanqing alone, it would be better for him and Gu to go together. If they couldn't find Han Yunxi, it would be better to subdue Bai Yanqing first. Thinking of this, Long Fei deliberately looked back at Gu and said, "Cold Gu, Gu, it's time for you to make your move." Any time. Gu wasn't stupid. Although he didn't think as deeply or as thoroughly as Long Fei, he more or less knew that this was a trap. However, their best option was to meet up with Gu Beiwei and Tang Li. It was just that he was too lazy to think about it. The biggest advantage of following Long Fei was that he didn't have to think about so many complicated things. Scheming against each other, trying to figure out people's minds, and scheming were all too complicated and tiring. In any case, Long Fei would definitely think of everything that he could think of, but he might not be able to think of anything that Long Fei could think of. He only had one goal in entering the underground palace, and that was to fight. If he saw Bai Yanqing, he would fight with all his might. Although he wasn't a poison goo human that was raised, and although he still didn't know why he was immortal, he knew that he was much younger than Bai Yanqing. In fact, Bai Yanqing was an elder, and he was a junior. He wanted to see who could take a beating better, him, the young immortal, or that old immortal, Bai Yanqing. Although Ningjing's voice wasn't continuous, it still didn't stop. Although they were in the maze, with everyone's hearing, they could still accurately distinguish the source of the sound. Long Fei and Gu moved forward as quickly as possible, while Gu Beiwen and Tang Li also moved forward quickly. Although there were situations where they took the wrong path, they still circled back and continued moving forward in the end. One of them was in the west, and the other was in the east. They were getting closer and closer to Ningjing's position, and the closer they were, the less likely they would take the wrong path. Han Yunxi and fourth young Mistress Ren, who were hiding somewhere in the maze, had already heard Ningjing and Su Xiaoyu screams. Fourth young Mistress Ren was so frightened that she didn't know what to do. Han Yunxi leaned against the wall, listening carefully while thinking. It had to be said that she, who is usually decisive, was hesitating this time. She hesitated for a long time and didn't know what to do until now. She knew that Long Fei and the rest had solved the riddle and should be coming over. Otherwise, Bai Yanqing wouldn't have questioned her about the prescription. However, She didn't know that Long Fei Yi and the rest had already arrived at the underground palace and were in the maze. Bai Yanqing's motive for doing this was to lure her out. As long as she didn't go out, Bai Yanqing wouldn't dare to do anything to Ning Jing, Little Yu and the rest. She could even take the opportunity to escape from the maze. Bai Yanqing wouldn't let the hostages die. She knew that the best choice was to take the opportunity to escape. Perhaps she could meet up with Long Fei Yi and the rest after escaping. This way, it would be the best way to save Ning Jing and Little Yu. However, Ning Jing and Little Yu would suffer. What should she do? Fourth young mistress Ran was pulled along by Han Yunxi as they ran for their lives. She still hadn't recovered from her shock and was still trembling with fear. She sat on the ground and hugged her knees. Han Yunxi exhaled and asked casually, "Fourth young mistress Ran, Bai Yanqing wants to lure us out. What do you think we should do?" Fourth young mistress Ran raised her head. Aye. Han Yunxi was helpless and didn't pursue the matter. Medical practitioners, especially doctors who were involved in clinical operations, had a stronger psychological quality than the average person. However, no matter how strong a person's psychological quality was, there was a bottom line. Fourth young mistress Ran, who had never experienced fighting and killing, had not broken down until now. Han Yunxi should have comforted her, but she really wasn't in the mood. She was anxious. Only God knew what Ning Jing and Little Yu were going through at this moment. At this moment, fourth young mistress Rin said timidly, "Princess, I won't do anything. It's just that I don't understand why the voices are coming from two different directions." These words immediately reminded Han Yunxi. Almost as soon as fourth young mistress Rin finished speaking, Han Yunxi blurted out, "Our reinforcements have arrived at the maze. It must be. If Bai Yanqing wanted to lure her out, he could have used one hostage. Why did he have to use two hostages at the same time and from two different directions? No matter how capable Bai Yanqing was, he couldn't possibly have the ability to split himself into two. He could only be with one of the hostages. If he was with Su Xiaoyu, wouldn't he be afraid that she would look for Ning Jing? Although Bai Yanqing's subordinates were all highly skilled in martial arts and poison, they wouldn't be able to defeat her even if they joined forces. Bai Yanqing was asking for trouble. The only possibility was that Bai Yanqing not only wanted to lure her out, but he also wanted to lure the others out and split them up. These others must be Long Fei Yi and the rest. Fourth young mistress Ren was just curious and didn't know much. Han Yunxi hesitated for a moment and said seriously, "Fourth young mistress Ren, stay here and don't move. I'll go over and take a look." Fourth young mistress Ren held Han Yunxi's hand nervously. She seemed to want to say something, but didn't dare to. In the end, she let go of Han Yunxi's hand. Han Yunxi knew that fourth young mistress Ren was worried that she wouldn't be able to come back once she left. Han Yunxi squatted down and looked at fourth young mistress Ren seriously. "If I leave now, I might not be able to come back for a long time, or even forever." "I know." Fourth young mistress Ren lowered her head and didn't dare to look at Han Yunxi. "If you follow me." Before Han Yunxi could finish her sentence, fourth young mistress Ren interrupted her. "We'll be in more danger, and I'll be a burden to you. I choose to stay." Fourth young mistress Ren took out a poison pill and said seriously, "This is a slow-acting poison. It won't have any effect on the body before it acts up. It will only act up after a year. Take it first, and I'll be able to find you when the time comes. I'll be able to find the poisoned person quickly. There are so many labyrinths." Although she was sure that this was a huge honeycomb labyrinth, she didn't know where they were in the honeycomb labyrinth. Once they were far away, it wouldn't be easy to come back to find them. She could only rely on the detoxification system. It would take a year for the poison to act up, which was enough insurance. Because if she couldn't come back after a year, she wouldn't come back. Han Yunxi thought that fourth young mistress Ren would hesitate, but she actually took the poison pill and swallowed it. Han Yunxi saw this and felt grateful. She was so afraid that fourth young mistress Ren wouldn't be able to bear the risk and would cry and beg her to save her. The person Gu Beiwa chose was really reliable. No matter what, she had to try her best to protect fourth young mistress Ren. A woman like her would definitely have a bright future in the medical school. After settling fourth young Mistress Rin down, Han Yunxi hurriedly set off. She was afraid that Ning Jing's voice would stop. If that happened, it would be difficult for her to find her. Unfortunately, after Han Yunxi ran for a long distance, Ning Jing's voice stopped abruptly as she got closer to her. Not long after, Su Xiaoyu's voice stopped as well. Han Yunxi was so angry that she wanted to kick the wall with her foot, but she forced herself to hold back. She couldn't expose her whereabouts, even if she couldn't find her. The voice stopped. Could it be that Long Fei Yi and the rest had found her? Han Yunxi didn't hesitate and continued to walk forward cautiously. She didn't dare to walk too fast or go too far, for fear that she would choose the wrong fork and go in the wrong direction. She really hoped that Long Fei Yi and the rest were around, so that she wouldn't go in the wrong direction if there was any movement or sound. At this moment, Long Fei Yi and the rest had gathered together and were standing at the door of a stone room. Ning Jing's voice clearly came from inside, but when they arrived, there was no one in the stone room. Long Fei Yi personally grabbed Tang Li's arm. Otherwise, Tang Li would have already rushed in. It was obvious that there was a trap in the stone room. Bai Yanqing was hiding in a dark corner of the stone room, cold as he stared at the group at the door. He wanted to lure Han Yunxi out and scatter the group in different directions. But who knew that these four fellows would come looking for him together? There wasn't even a trace of Han Yunxi's shadow. Since everyone was here, he didn't mind having a few more hostages in his hands. He didn't mind imprisoning Long Fei Yi as well. Now that the situation in Cloud Realm had settled down, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, their two masters, were missing. The Eastern, Western Qin factions would definitely have a good show to watch. The world would never be peaceful again. Long Fei Yi and the rest lingered at the door of the stone room. Bai Yanqing's lips curled into a cold smile as he pushed open the mechanism and walked down from the stone wall. He chuckled and said, "Young people, long time no see." Chapter 1125. Long Fei Yi and the others could clearly see that Bai Yanqing had come down from the mezzanine of the stone room. Then, were the hostages also trapped in a mezzanine? "Where's Ning Jing?" "Bai Yanqing, return Ning Jing to me, otherwise I'll fight you." Tang Li was already half out of control. When he did not hear Ning Jing's voice, he was still calm, but when he heard Ning Jing's shouts, he could not control himself. Anger, excitement, nervousness, worry, fear, and etc. All kinds of bad emotions filled his heart. If he did not see Ning Jing, he did not know when he would go crazy. It was a good thing Long Fei Yi was holding on to him, otherwise he would have been taken down by Bai Yanqing. "Return Ning Jing to me. Do you hear me? For a grown man, other than kidnapping women? What else do you know? Tell me. If you have fucking guts, let them all go. Father will fight you one-on-one. Do you dare? Bai Yanqing, you coward." Bai Yanqing allowed Tang Li to curse and berate him as he wished, but didn't spare him a glance. All of his attention was on Long Fei. Their sweetheart had been kidnapped, but Long Fei Ye's reaction was completely different from Tang Li's. Cold as he looked at Bai Yanqing, not moving at all, it was hard to see through him. This kind of calmness, Bai Yanqing admired him very much. It seems like the East Qin Crown Prince does not care about the life or death of his sweetheart. Bai Yanqing said with a cold smile, "She will not die." Long Fei Ye's voice was as cold as ice, filled with certainty. Bai Yanqing disliked Long Fei Ye's attitude the most, this kind of aloof attitude that seemed like everything was under his control. He coldly said, "It's too early to say. Don't regret it later." What a joke. Long Fei Ye's tone became even more sarcastic. "Bai Yanqing, you just want the two of us to fail in our dual cultivation and kill each other. You just want the Eastern and Western Qin sides to continue fighting. You won't kill her. You have to take good care of her. Otherwise, why would you find her medicine to prevent miscarriage?" Long Fei Yi was actually anxious in his heart, but he had already calmed down after such a long time. A little while more wouldn't make a difference. The hostage must be in the stone room. At the very least, Ning Jing must be there. There must be a trap in this stone room. Therefore, they must not enter unless absolutely necessary. Even if there were no traps, It would be easy for Bai Yanqing to poison them in a confined space like the stone chamber. However, it would be difficult for them to avoid the poison in time. The wisest choice was to waste time with Bai Yanqing and look for flaws and countermeasures. He didn't believe that Bai Yanqing would be able to escape now that he was right in front of him. Bai Yanqing didn't care that his scheme had been exposed. At this point, he no longer had the patience to play with this group of young people. Today, he was determined to imprison Long Fei Yi. Bai Yanqing finally looked at the furious Tang Li. However, he pointed at Long Fei Yi and said, "We can have a one-on-one duel, but he'll come. Those who don't dare are cowards." Long Fei Yi was about to answer when Gu suddenly laughed wildly. "Old man, you don't even dare to accept Tang Li's challenge. What right do you have to fight Long Fei Yi?" Bai Yanqing wasn't so easily provoked. He ignored Gu and looked cold at Long Fei Yi, waiting for Long Fei Yi to accept the challenge. Other than Long Fei Yi, who else had Gu's cheap mouth lost to? Bai Yanqing's indifference didn't discourage him. Instead, it aroused his fighting spirit. He said, "Oh, right. I forgot that you're a coward. Poison Girl said she was going to castrate you, but you didn't even show up." At this point, Bai Yanqing had already glanced at Gu from the corner of his eyes. Aside from Long Fei and Han Yunxi, he'd never really considered anyone else worthy of his attention. As for Gu Qixiao, he only knew that the man was a test subject who'd survived a calamity thanks to medicine. Ouch! Gu suddenly slapped his thigh hard. The sudden and intense reaction made Long Fei Yi and the others look at him, wondering what was wrong with him. Bai Yanqing finally looked over as well. Gu Qixiao said, "Long Fei, this old man suddenly remembered something. TSK. Why didn't I think of it back then?" "What is it?" Long Fei Yi asked. Although he didn't know what Gu was up to, he was very sure that Gu was putting on an act. He was very willing to play along. Gu narrowed his eyes and looked like he was deep in thought. He said seriously, "Long Fei Yi, do you think this old thing is a eunuch? Otherwise, why wouldn't he dare to show up when Poison Girl threatened to castrate him?" As soon as he said this, even Tang Li, who was still struggling, suddenly quieted down. The spacious corridor was completely silent. Which man could stand this kind of provocation? Bai Yanqing wouldn't be a man if he kept quiet. He said angrily, "Shut up." Gu was a very strong-willed person. Since Bai Yanqing had ignored him earlier, he couldn't be bothered with Bai Yanqing now. He didn't even look at him. He chuckled at Long Fei Yi and said, TSK, no wonder. Poison Girl has always suspected that this old thing isn't her father. She said that they weren't related by blood. Maybe he really isn't Poison Girl's father. He could not do such a thing. No wonder, Madame Mu Xian followed someone else. Gu, shut up. Bai Yanqing was thoroughly enraged. Mu Xian had always been his greatest weakness. Any topic related to Mu Xian could touch his sensitive nerves. Gu smiled carelessly, his face full of disdain. When he was investigating Han Yunxi's identity, he had thoroughly investigated the rumors about Mu Xian and the poisoned sex orphan. He had heard several versions of the rumors. Judging from Bai Yanqing's sinister actions and the fact that Mu Xian had left the poisoned sect to marry Han Kongan, there must be some grudge between Mu Xian and Bai Yanqing. Perhaps Bai Yanqing was tormenting Poison Girl like this to get back at Mu Xian. Thinking up to here, Gu turned back to Bai Yanqing. He rubbed his chin and asked seriously, "Old thing, there's no one else here besides this man. Tell me the truth. Is it because you can't do it that Mu Xian abandoned you and even settled for trash like Han Kongan?" "Gu, this old man will kill you." Bai Yanqing exploded. "Kill this old man? You're neither male nor female, an immortal and indestructible thing. You think you're worthy?" Gu scoffed. Bai Yanqing immediately raised his sword and charged out. Gu shot a look at Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiwei before fleeing down the stone corridor. This was the first time in his life that Bai Yanqing had been humiliated like this. He was so angry that he swung his sword and chased after Gu. Gu hadn't actually run far. He had started fighting with Bai Yanqing in the corridor behind the right fork. Long Fei Yi had captured Tang Li and hadn't moved from his spot. He was basically betting on the left side of the corridor to prevent Bai Yanqing from escaping. Gu Beiwe had already entered the secret room and quickly searched for hidden passages on the walls and floor. Ning Jing's voice had come from this room, so the hostages must still be here. "Brother, let me go. Let me in," Tang Li said anxiously. "Try making noise again," Long Fei said sternly. His line of sight had always been in front of him. Although he couldn't see the situation on Gu's side, his attention was focused there. The reason why he let Gu Beiwe enter the stone room alone was because Gu Beiwe was fast. If there were any traps, he would be able to escape quickly. Long Fei let go of Tang Li, and Tang Li really didn't dare to make any more noise. He had to be scolded before he could calm down. He looked into the stone room and prepared his hidden weapons, guarding against situations that could happen at any time. In front of him, the sounds of fighting were getting louder and louder. Gu and Bai Yanqing were locked in a fierce battle. Gu's swordsmanship wasn't as good as Bai Yanqing's. However, with the sword spirit of Immerse's treasured sword in his hand, in terms of martial arts, he and Bai Yanqing were on par. He had also shown his trump card at the beginning and only fought with Bai Yanqing. Now that they had fought for more than 10 moves, there was still no clear winner. Bai Yanqing wasn't so patient. He had to vent his anger on Gu. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to take it lying down. Suddenly, he put away his sword and faced Gu's sword head-on, closing in on Gu. A complicated look flashed past Gu's eyes. He suddenly retreated all the way to Long Fei's side. At this time, Gu Beiwe just came out of the stone room. Other than the mezzanine where Bai Yanqing had hidden, he didn't find any other mechanism. Gu Beiwe wanted to talk to Long Fei. Seeing that Gu had fled back and Bai Yanqing had chased after them, they became alert and didn't dare to be distracted. Long Fei frowned slightly. Why did Gu run back? Didn't he know to buy more time? Although Gu Beiwe didn't find any other mechanisms in the stone room, it didn't mean that there were no mezzanines or traps in the stone room. Many of the Tang sect's hidden weapons were small mechanisms. He often stayed in the Tang sect. Although he didn't learn, he knew a little about mechanism design. In order to prevent others from discovering many traps in secret rooms, the activation mechanism would be hidden outside and guarded by specialized people. Tang Li's attention was all on Ning Jing. Otherwise, he would have thought of it long ago. If he led Gu Beiwe around the stone room to find the mechanism, they should be able to find it very quickly. Gu lured Bai Yanqing over like this. Gu Beiwe and Tang Li couldn't move. They could only wait and see. "Brat, don't run if you have the guts," Bai Yanqing said angrily. "Which eye of yours saw me run away?" Gu retorted. He turned around and said to Long Fei and the others, "There's a poisonous aura behind you. It should be a group of poisonous snakes. Be careful of the poisonous gas." It turned out that Gu had specially come over to warn them. The group of snakes was behind them. Even with their hearing, they didn't detect any movement. It seemed that not only could this group of poisonous snakes spit out poisonous gas, but they were also silent when they crawled. Bai Yanqing used poison as expected. Gu Beiwe immediately took out his small golden knife. Tang Li was also on guard, holding his hidden weapon. When facing a group of poisonous snakes, they could only attack from afar. It would be troublesome if they were entangled by the snakes. The group of snakes hadn't come close yet. Long Fei was relieved to leave his back to Gu Beiwe and Tang Li. He looked at Bai Yanqing coldly. "Haha, Gu, you're right today. Bai Yanqing is a coward." After Gu's previous no comment, Long Fei's coward was even more insulting. Long Fei was obviously doing it on purpose. Bai Yanqing was completely enraged. "Long Fei, just you wait. After I take care of Gu, you'll be next." Chapter 1126. Deal with him? Long Fei sneered disdainfully. "Bai Yanqing, you can't even deal with the 4 of us with your immortal body, and you still have to use poison. If you're not a coward, then what are you?" Gu's eyes lit up as if he had heard something. He quickly said, "Long Fei, let's not argue with a coward. Even if he uses poison, we're not afraid of him." Bai Yanqing could tell that he was trying to goad him, but he couldn't take it lying down. He immediately blew a whistle, and the snakes that were approaching immediately retreated. This group of people didn't know that Han Yunxi, who couldn't find anyone, had already activated the detoxification system to detect the presence of the venomous snakes and was about to come over. In the end, the venomous snakes scattered, and her direction was completely messed up. She could only slowly search around. Bai Yanqing said angrily, "All right, old man doesn't need to use poison. Do you want to come one by one, or all of you together?" Long Fei Yi was waiting for him to say that. If Bai Yanqing didn't use poison, they would be much safer. Even if Han Yunqi wasn't around, they could still tie Bai Yanqing up. One by one, lest you lose and say that we bully you with numbers. Gu was in a good mood, and he replied with a smile. In your dreams. Bai Yanqing didn't understand where this group of youngsters got the confidence to say such things. Were they trying to trap him? That was simply wishful thinking. He suddenly flew towards Gu. Gu didn't dodge, and he swung his sword fiercely at him. Even if he couldn't kill Bai Yanqing, he definitely wouldn't miss any chance to hurt him. He wouldn't die, right? It was good that he wouldn't die. He could keep him and slowly torture him. Gu's sword slashed Bai Yanqing's arm, leaving a deep cut. Bai Yanqing was indifferent, and he clawed at Gu's neck. Gu Qixiao was naturally on guard and quickly dodged out of the way. He threw a punch at Bai Yanqing's face. Bai Yanqing dodged to the side and drew his sword to stab Gu's abdomen. Gu narrowly avoided it. He retreated again and patted his chest. You scared me to death. Bai Yanqing did not give him any chance to catch his breath and continued to chase after him. Gu once again raised his sword and ruthlessly stabbed forward. Bai Yanqing still didn't dodge and allowed the sword to pierce through his abdomen. He still attacked Gu head-on, and the tip of his sword was close to Gu's heart. Gu still wanted to escape, but Bai Yanqing suddenly rushed forward. In an instant, Gu's entire sword pierced through Bai Yanqing's abdomen. Bai Yanqing also forced himself in front of Gu. He drew a dagger from his sleeve and pressed it against Gu's heart. He didn't stab it, but Gu didn't dare to move. You've lost. Bai Yanqing's eyes were cold, and he stared at Gu. Gu didn't answer him, and his eyes turned cold. In an instant, the surrounding thorny vines rose up crazily and surrounded the two of them. Bai Yanqing laughed. Brat, you're trying to trap me with thorny vines? Can I? Gu sneered. Let me go, or else I'll make sure you can't escape for the rest of your life. Bai Yanqing snorted and drew his sword with his other hand. With a fierce swing, he cut off a large patch of thorny vines. Old man can leave your corpse intact, as long as you admit that you're a coward. If Bai Yanqing didn't want to fight for his dignity, why would he bother with Gu? He would have made a move on Long Fei Yi long ago. Gu looked at the broken thorny vines, and then lowered his head to look at the blade pressed against his heart. He pretended to be terrified. This, old Bai, actually, the one who wants to kill you is Long Fei Yi, not me. Cut the crap. Are you going to talk or not? Bai Yanqing didn't have much patience. I'll talk. If I say that Long Fei Yi is a coward, can you let me go? Gu asked anxiously. Before Bai Yanqing could react, Long Fei Yi's eyes immediately shot out murderous intent. He drew his sword and released an unusually sharp sword aura, which directly slashed at Gu's head. Gu, you're asking for death. The sword aura was so sharp that it was unstoppable. It really chopped down on Gu's head, and even Bai Yanqing was affected. If he hadn't grabbed Gu's sleeve, he would have been sent flying. As for the thorny vines surrounding them, they were all destroyed and fell to the ground. Bai Yanqing was dumbfounded. What was going on? Long Fei actually made a move against Gu Qixiao? After all, Gu was the only one among them who knew poison. Long Fei Yi was crazy? Tang Li, who didn't know the truth, was also stunned. Brother, blood slowly flowed down along Gu's hairline, flowed to his long eyelashes and dripped down. The whole place was silent. Bai Yanqing looked at Gu in disbelief. For a moment, he was a little confused and didn't know what was going on. However, Long Fei Yi's anger hadn't subsided. If he didn't give Gu a few slashes, this guy would become bolder and bolder. It was bad enough that he didn't end the battle quickly with Bai Yanqing, but he actually had the mood to take the opportunity to scold him. Gu, there won't be a next time, Long Fei Yi said and slashed down again. The sword aura still hit Gu's head. Brother, are you crazy? Tang Li roared. Gu Beiwa leaned against the wall, lowered his head, and smiled helplessly. Gu took 2 slashes in a row and squatted down in pain. From Bai Yanqing's point of view, he probably couldn't hold on and was about to collapse. He looked at the furious Long Fei Yi and was about to speak. Who knew? Long Fei Yi raised the profound frost sword for the 3rd time. At this moment, Gu, who was supposed to be lying down like a corpse, actually touched his head and jumped up. He spat fiercely. Long Fei Yi, are you fucking done? It hurts. Although Gu wasn't lying down like a corpse, but when he jumped up, it felt like a real corpse. Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiyue, who knew the truth, didn't have much of a reaction. However, Tang Li and Bai Yanqing were shocked, especially Bai Yanqing. He was stunned and stared at Gu dumbfounded. A sense of fear slowly crept into his heart. Could it be? Gu wiped the blood off his face and glanced at Long Fei Yi. 2 slashes, I'll remember it. Try talking nonsense again. Long Fei Yi wasn't afraid of him. Gu immediately turned to look at Bai Yanqing and suddenly flew over. Bai Yanqing regained his senses and immediately retreated. He questioned loudly, Gu, who are you? If you admit that you're a coward, I'll tell you. Gu snorted, don't even think about it. Bai Yanqing immediately went up to him. He didn't believe it. He definitely didn't believe that Gu was also immortal. It must be that Long Fei Ye's 2 slashes had some kind of secret hidden in them. He had already used up all the herbs to raise the poisonous Gu human. It would take thousands of years for it to grow again. There definitely wasn't a second poisonous Gu human in this world. There definitely wasn't. He was the one and only. He pulled out his dagger. Seeing Gu coming towards him, he immediately stabbed the dagger into Gu's heart. Go to hell. Gu allowed the dagger to stab into his heart. He looked down at him from above and then kicked him away. If you can kill me, I'll call you my lord. Looking at Gu's chest that was covered in fresh blood and seeing Gu standing perfectly fine, Bai Yanqing couldn't help but believe what he saw with his own eyes. He said angrily, Who are you? How did this happen? I'm your lord. Gu didn't hesitate anymore. He pressed his hands on Bai Yanqing's shoulders. In an instant, thorny vines shot out from his arms and bound Bai Yanqing's body a few times. Bai Yanqing was shocked. He tried to break free from the thorny vines, but couldn't, so he used poison on the thorny vines. He struggled violently, and the poison powder scattered from his body onto Gu and the thorny vines. It's useless. Gu snorted. He retreated and used the thorny vines to wrap Bai Yanqing a few times, trapping Bai Yanqing tightly. Bai Yanqing couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that he would be tricked like this. He stopped struggling and stared at Gu in a daze. He still couldn't believe it and didn't want to believe it. Long Fei Yi made a prompt decision. Gu Beiyue, take Tang Li to find the mechanism and save them. Asking Bai Yanqing where the hostage was equivalent to asking for nothing. Finding the hostage himself was the best way. Tang Li and Gu Beiyue were about to leave when smoke suddenly came out from the cracks of the surrounding stone walls. Oh no, it's poisonous. Gu shouted. Long Fei Yi and the other 2 immediately held their breaths. Soon, a group of poisonous snakes came from both sides. It was the group of poisonous snakes that could spit out poisonous gas. There are a lot of snakes, Gu said with a serious face. Not to mention that Long Fei Yi and the others couldn't hold their breath for long. The number of poisonous snakes was enough to catch them off guard. Moreover, only God knew what other poisonous tricks Bai Yanqing had left. Coward! You said you wouldn't use poison. Tang Li scolded. Bai Yanqing remained unmoved. If he knew Gu Qixiao had an undying body, he would have used poisons against him. How long had he waited for this day to make Eastern and Western Qin turn against each other? Today, no matter what kind of provocation, he wouldn't stop. Gu couldn't figure out what kind of poison the gas was, and he couldn't detoxify the snake's poison. He frowned and looked at Long Fei Yi, waiting for Long Fei Yi to make a decision. You'd better hold on. Once you're poisoned, old man guarantees that you'll die within the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. Long Fei Yi also hesitated. What was the point of trapping Bai Yanqing but losing their lives? Suddenly, Tang Li widened his eyes and gestured vigorously at Gu Beiyue and Long Fei Yi, as if he wanted to say something. Long Fei Yi didn't understand, But Gu Beiwei immediately understood. The princess was also in a maze. As long as they held on for a while, the princess would definitely be able to find them by following the poison. There were so many poisonous snakes here, and there was also a large area of poisonous gas. The princess would definitely be able to find them soon. As long as the princess came, Bai Yanqing wouldn't be able to do anything to them. Wait, this was the only solution, and also everyone's way out. Although Long Fei Yi didn't understand, when he saw Gu Beiwei's expression, he knew that they could hold on. At this moment, a poisonous snake suddenly flew towards Long Fei Yi, and then all the poisonous snakes launched a group attack. Gu was restraining Bai Yanqing and couldn't make a move. Long Fei Yi raised his sword and waved a large group of poisonous snakes back. Gu Beiwei and Tang Li immediately made a move, using Tang Li's hidden needles. They had to keep a certain distance from the poisonous snakes and then kill them to avoid being poisoned. Seeing this, Bai Yanqing only sneered. Gu rushed over and said angrily, "I'll make you wish you were dead." Gu was about to make a move, but Tang Li suddenly raised his hand and found that the skin on the back of his hand had turned black again. "Brother, I've been poisoned," Tang Li blurted out and gave up holding his breath. Seeing this, everyone was shocked. Only Bai Yanqing sneered. How could his ambush be blocked just by holding one's breath? Bai Yanqing looked at Gu with a smile. They don't have much time left. Their lives are in your hands. Chapter 11:27. Bai Yanqing's undying body wasn't what Long Fei Yi and the others were most afraid of. What they were most afraid of was Bai Yanqing's poison skills. Seeing Tang Li's blackened arm, Gu knew that Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiwei couldn't escape either. He said angrily to Bai Yanqing, "Antidote." "Let go of me," Bai Yanqing said slowly. Tang Li suddenly remembered something and exclaimed, "Brother, seventh young master, my sister-in-law has already escaped." "My sister-in-law has escaped. She's in a maze. She'll be here soon, as long as we hold on," Tang Li said anxiously, but as soon as he finished speaking, he was stunned and fell to his knees. His entire face was black, and he couldn't speak. "The poison is acting up." Gu was shocked. Han Yunxi was in a maze. The poison here was so thick, she would definitely be able to find her way here soon. But they didn't have time. Tang Li's life was at stake. Long Fei Yi bent down to help him and found that his palm was also starting to turn black. He looked at Gu Beiwei and saw that Gu Beiwei was looking at his palm. There was no doubt that the poison was about to act up. Gu had no choice and didn't have any more time to waste. He said to Bai Yanqing, "Give me 2 sets of antidotes out of the 3 of us first. Otherwise, how can I trust you? If you want to bargain with old man, you can wait for Han Yunxi to rush over." Bai Yanqing sneered. He knew that Han Yunxi would be able to find her way here, but at this point, he was very willing to take a gamble. Gu Beiwei suddenly fell to his knees and couldn't hold on anymore. Only Long Fei Yi was still holding on. Gu glanced at Long Fei Yi. He had no choice but to let him go. The vines immediately loosened, and Bai Yanqing immediately retreated. Gu chased after him, and Bai Yanqing really threw out the antidote. However, when Gu caught it, he realized that there was only one portion of the antidote. "Bai Yanqing, you're shameless." Gu was furious. Just as he was about to attack, he saw a woman running out of the darkness behind Bai Yanqing. The woman had one hand on the wall and the other on her waist. Although her dress was loose, it was obvious that her belly was bulging. Except for Bai Yanqing, who did not know what was going on, everyone was stunned. Even Gu Beiwei and Tang Li, who were kneeling on the ground, raised their heads. Long Fei Yi was the most stunned. His handsome face, which had always been cold, showed panic and helplessness that he had never shown before. This woman in front of him, this pregnant woman, was Han Yunxi. Who else could she be? His gaze slowly moved down from her face and finally landed on her slightly bulging stomach. His gaze seemed to be locked by something and would never be able to move away. At this moment, Long Fei Yi must have forgotten the dangerous situation he was in. He must have forgotten that he was poisoned. Perhaps he even forgot who he was. Although he knew that Han Yunxi was pregnant, knowing and seeing were 2 completely different experiences. especially when he saw that she was standing perfectly fine. He was even more at a loss. He did not know what to do or what to say. Unknowingly, he smiled. Looking at Han Yunxi's belly, he smiled foolishly. Bai Yanqing quickly realized that there was someone behind him. Just as he was about to turn around, Gu's thorny vines attacked again. With the experience of being tied up just now, Bai Yanqing immediately dodged and quickly realized that Han Yunxi was coming. Abominable! He cursed as he charged at Han Yunxi. When Han Yunxi saw Long Fei Yi, she wanted to pounce on him and give him a good hug, but she could not. She quickly dodged. At the same time, she threw the antidote to Long Fei Yi. Gu did not dare to use the antidote that Bai Yanqing gave him. He threw the antidote to Bai Yanqing and the thorny vines attacked again. Seeing that Bai Yanqing was about to catch Han Yunxi hurriedly dodged to the side. At the same time, the thorny vines also hit the stone wall and rebounded towards Bai Yanqing. Bai Yanqing could only dodge again. Han Yunxi took this opportunity and landed beside Long Fei Yi and the others. The first thing she did was to scatter a circle of powder around them to make the poisonous snakes retreat and not dare to come close. Long Fei Yi was taking the antidote. Han Yunxi glanced at him and whispered, "The children and I miss you." She did not delay, not even for a moment of tenderness. As soon as she finished speaking, she squatted down to feed Tang Li and Gu Beiyue the antidote. If it was not resolved soon, the two of them would die. Moreover, this poison could not be cured immediately with the antidote. Her antidote could only temporarily delay the time of death from the poison. Long Fei looked at her without a word, but his gaze was extremely warm and soft. "Long Fei Yi, all of you sit down. I have to perform acupuncture immediately." "You don't have much time," Han Yunxi said seriously. After seeing Han Yunxi cure the poison, everyone knew what was going on. Long Fei Yi also sat down. Han Yunxi looked back at Gu and saw that Gu and Bai Yanqing were still fighting. After Bai Yanqing was guarded against Gu's thorny vines, it seemed that it would not be so easy for Gu to trap him. "Don't worry, he's fine," Long Fei Yi said lightly. Han Yunxi had clearly found poison in Gu Qixiao's body as well. But why hadn't the poison flared up yet? She did not have time to think too much. Gu alone could not deal with Bai Yanqing. She had to quickly save Long Fei Yi and the rest. Only if she joined forces with Long Fei Yi could they restrain Bai Yanqing. "Raise your hand. Right hand," Han Yunxi said seriously. Long Fei Yi and the rest did as they were told. Han Yunxi did not detoxify them one by one, but the three of them detoxified the poison together. Because the time was really too short, the process of acupuncture was also the process of detoxification. In any case, it could buy some time. If she detoxified them one by one, it was very likely that the last person would not be able to be saved. That hateful Bai Yanqing, the poison he chose was really vicious. Han Yunxi was urgently detoxifying the poison when a sword aura suddenly came from behind her. She subconsciously turned around and saw Bai Yanqing's sword slashing towards Gu's head. Han Yunxi was shocked. "Gu!" She instinctively wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. The sword aura came down at full speed, and fresh blood flowed from Gu's forehead. Han Yunxi was so shocked that she could not speak, and a needle in her hand fell to the ground. This should be the first time she was so careless in detoxification. "He won't die. He also has an immortal body. Detoxify quick." Long Fei Yi had no choice but to tell the truth. Although Gu had once hoped that he could kill Bai Yanqing alone when Han Yunxi was not around, it seemed that his hopes were going to be dashed. "What?" Han Yunxi looked back in disbelief. "Detoxify quick. Gu can't trap him," Long Fei Yi said anxiously. Han Yunxi looked over again and saw that Gu was really fine and was fighting with Bai Yanqing again. Only then did she come back to her senses. Even though she was full of confusion and shock, she could not be bothered with it for the time being. She picked up the needle and continued detoxifying at a faster speed. As she applied the needle, she whispered, "There are only 3 needles left. 7th young master must hold on." Her heart raced. Her stomach was starting to feel uncomfortable from squatting for too long, so she simply knelt. Seeing this, Long Fei Yi's heart ached, and he wanted nothing more than to carry her. But he could not. Not only could he not carry her, but he could not disturb her. Looking at Han Yunxi kneeling in front of him, he secretly swore that in this life, no matter what, even if this woman betrayed him, he would never treat her and their child unfairly. Gu and Tang Li immediately moved closer to make it easier for Han Yunxi to apply the needles. Soon, another needle was done. There were only 2 needles left. She continued to search for acupoints on the hands of Long Fei Yi and the other 2 and applied the needles one by one. The second needle was also done. There was only 1 needle left. At this moment, Gu used a thorny vine to shoot out from behind by Yanqing and bind by Yanqing's waist. Long Fei Yi and the other 2 were overjoyed. Long Fei Yi whispered, "Quick, Gu has trapped him." But who knew that Bai Yanqing would fiercely pull the thorny vine over and at the same time pull Gu over and grab his neck. Gu let him grab him. The thorny vines on his hands shot out crazily and wrapped Bai Yanqing tightly. He raised his head and an unbridled smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He had won. Although he wouldn't die, he had still won. He had trapped Bai Yanqing. He would leave the rest to Long Fei Yi and Poison Girl. They would definitely take their revenge. At this moment, Han Yunxi finally finished the last needle. Long Fei wanted to pick Han Yunxi up, but he didn't dare to be as domineering as before. Instead, he carefully helped her to her feet. Gu Beiwei and Tang Li surrounded the right side, while Long Fei Yi held Han Yunxi's hand and blocked the left side. At this moment, Bai Yanqing and Gu were hugging each other. Both of them were bound by thorny vines. Gu yanked Bai Yanqing's hand away and tilted his head to look at Han Yunxi. He smiled brightly. "Poison Girl, isn't she brother powerful?" Han Yunxi and the others didn't dare to let down their guard. Even Han Yunxi didn't dare to ask about Gu's body. They had to find a safe way to truly trap Bai Yanqing. Tang Li quickly took out a coil of rope. This was the work of the Tang sect elders over the past few months. This rope was made of special material. It was very similar to the hidden thread, but much thicker. It was used to bind people's limbs. No matter who it was, they wouldn't be able to break free. The name of this rope was given by Mrs. Tang. It was called the Death Reaper rope. Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiwei took the rope and were about to act when Bai Yanqing suddenly stomped his foot. "Careful!" Tang Li was the first to react. He instinctively grabbed Gu's hand. Unfortunately, it was too late. The place where Gu and Bai Yanqing were standing suddenly caved in. The 2 of them fell down. It seemed to be very deep. Tang Li immediately rushed down to take a look, but he couldn't see anyone. "There are many traps here. Everyone be careful." Long Fei Yi held Han Yunxi's hand tightly. "What's going on, Gu?" Han Yunxi couldn't hold it in anymore. "Brother, Gu, he's also a poison Gu human?" Tang Li asked anxiously. He had wanted to ask just now. "I only know that he has an immortal body. As for whether he's a poison Gu human, that's up to him. He won't die. He might even be able to trap Bai Yanqing for a while. We have to find hostages immediately," Long Fei Yi said seriously. "Yes, we don't have to worry about 7th Young Master. Ning Jing and Su Xiaoyu are in different directions. It's best if we don't split up. We don't have much time." Sect Master Tang. "There should be a secret chamber in the stone room. Let's hurry and find it," Gu Beiwei said anxiously. Han Yunxi knew the situation was urgent, but she couldn't take her eyes off the pitch-black hole beneath her feet. She was too shocked by this truth. 7th Young Master won't die. Chapter 1128. She stared at the deep hole beneath her feet, her heart stuffy with an indescribable discomfort. No wonder Gu always said that he wouldn't die. It turned out that "I won't die" wasn't a joke, nor was it Gu's arrogance. It was his truth. Was he a poison Gu human? A poison Gu human raised by Gu Yantian? But the medicine used to raise poison Gu humans was long gone. If Gu was a poison Gu human, he should know Bai Yanqing very well. A terrifying thought flashed through Han Yunxi's mind, and this thought made her even more upset. What would be at the bottom of such a deep hole? Even if Gu didn't die, he would still be in pain. In pain? "Don't worry," Long Fei Yi said indifferently. "Princess, 7th Young Master should be fine." It's more important to find him, Gu Beiwei also advised. Tang Li was anxious about Ning Jing and had already started searching to the right. He circled around the stone room. The mechanism must be in this circle. Han Yunqi knew that the situation was urgent. She restrained her thoughts and said, "Follow Tang Li. Don't let him go alone. There are a lot of poisonous creatures and traps here." Gu Beiwei chased after him. Long Fei Yi held Han Yunqi's hand tightly and followed behind. Where Gu and Bai Yanqing went, and how long Gu could trap Bai Yanqing, everything was still unknown. Rescuing the hostages was the most important thing. Otherwise, even if they caught Bai Yanqing, they would definitely be restrained. Tang Li walked very carefully and didn't miss any places where there might be hidden mechanisms. Gu Beiwei stood guard behind him, his entire body on guard in case anything unexpected happened. Han Yunqi and Long Fei Yi followed closely. However, not long after, Long Fei Yi could not take it anymore. He suddenly stopped and pulled Han Yunqi into his arms and hugged her. His words were on the tip of his tongue, but he didn't have time to say them. He didn't know what to say either, so he simply said, "Yunqi, I'm sorry." Han Yunqi was slightly stunned. She could clearly hear the sobs in Long Fei Yi's voice. How serious was this apology? She originally thought that he would question her about why she didn't tell him that she was pregnant. She even wanted to explain that she was confused about the situation. Who would have thought that he didn't reprimand or question her at all? He only said, "I'm sorry." She was both touched and distressed. Just as she was about to hug him tightly, he immediately let go. The hostages had not been rescued yet, and everyone was still in a dangerous situation. Why did the two of them have to hug? Why did he have to hug her for so long? They still held hands and followed Tang Li and the others forward while paying attention to the movements around them. However, Han Yunqi couldn't help it. She suddenly stopped and turned to hug Long Fei Yi. It was only for a moment before she let go. Long Fei Yi wanted to hug her again, but he couldn't. "Idiot, it's not like it's your fault." Han Yunqi spoke in a low voice as she gently placed his hand on her stomach. "If we're sorry, then it's us who've wronged this little fellow. When he's born, we'll properly apologize to him." As soon as Long Fei Yi touched Han Yunqi's swollen belly, he immediately tensed up. He was so nervous that he couldn't keep walking forward. He was so nervous that he didn't even listen to Han Yunqi's words. Han Yunqi clearly felt his hand tremble slightly when it touched her belly. Heavens, this fellow had never seen so much of the world. Just how nervous was he to make his hand tremble? Although his hand was trembling, he didn't let go when Han Yunqi tried to remove his hand. Instead, he gently placed his hand on her belly. This guy who was as mighty as a god and as cold as an Azura couldn't be a child slave, right? At this moment, Han Yunqi was suddenly very worried that she was pregnant with a girl. If that was the case, she would be jealous of this little fellow. She was still in her mother's womb, yet Long Fei Yi was already so nervous. What would happen if she was born? Wouldn't Long Fei Yi spoil her to the skies? Han Yunqi decisively pushed Long Fei Yi's hand away and said seriously, "Let's go. Be careful. You owe me first. Let me hug you properly later." Long Fei Yi could only hold her hand and continue walking forward. He wasn't giving in, but he was enduring. After all, this wasn't the time for a family of 3 to be affectionate. Suddenly, Tang Li stopped and said in surprise, "It's here. There's a switch." He carefully lifted up a brick and saw that it was hollow under it. There was a wooden valve. Tang Li immediately went to pull the valve, but Long Fei Yi stopped him. "Wait, check it first." Tang Li immediately stopped. There was bound to be an ambush near any switch. Tang Li must have been overjoyed. He turned back and smiled at Long Fei Yi. "Okay, I'll check it now." How long had it been since he had seen Tang Li's good-looking and pure smile? Tang Li was so happy that he almost screamed. When he thought about how he would be able to see Ning Jing after activating the switch, he was excited. When he saw Ning Jing, he would definitely tell her what was on his mind. The words that he had been hiding in his heart for a long time, and the words that he had been preparing for a long time. He wanted to let her know how much he loved her. Tang Li was both nervous and excited as he searched around the valve for a long time. Finally, he found a very thin line. Just as he was about to pull it, Han Yunshi quickly pulled him away. There's poison, be careful. Sister-in-law, this is a double switch. This line has to be activated together with the valve. If the valve is activated alone, or this line is activated alone, the hidden weapon hidden in the wall will shoot out. The wall here is not thick, so there should be hidden needles, Tang Li explained. There's poison on the line. You pull the valve, and I'll pull the line. I'll count to 3, and we'll pull it together, Han Yunshi said seriously. The two of them pulled the switch at the same time, and a rumbling sound came from the stone room. Tang Li was extremely surprised. He ran into the stone room in a flash. Gu Beiwei watched him closely, almost like a shadow. Han Yunshi wanted to chase after him, but Long Fei Yi stopped her. Don't run, I'll carry you. Although they could not be intimate in this situation, Long Fei Yi still had to take care of Han Yunshi, who was pregnant, no matter how urgent the situation was. It's okay. I'll use Qinggong, I won't run. It's been more than 5 months, and it's basically stable. 4th Miss Rin's miscarriage prevention medicine is very effective. Don't worry, Han Yunshi said. Gu Beiwei had already determined that she had completely recovered from miscarriage. Otherwise, Long Fei Yi would have directly carried her and not let her go. Long Fei Yi did not answer her. He held her waist and wanted to use Qinggong to carry her away. However, when he held her waist, he found that Han Yunshi basically did not have a waist. If it was in the past, his arms would wrap around her from behind, and his big palm would wrap around her flat waist tightly, and he would immediately be able to carry her away. However, at this moment, his big hand was not covering her beautiful waist, but the slightly bulging edge of her lower abdomen. The moment Long Fei Yi touched this place, he became nervous again. He did not dare to use any strength, not even a little bit. Han Yunshi felt that his big hand was stiff and snickered. He took her hand away and said seriously, "It's okay. I know what I'm doing. Trust me." Long Fei Yi stretched out his leg and said coldly, "Step on it and hug me." His tone was commanding, and his gaze was even more so. At this moment, Tang Li's voice was heard. "Brother, sister-in-law, come and see." Han Yunshi had no choice but to step on Long Fei Yi's right leg and hug him. Once she hugged him tightly, Long Fei Yi exerted force with his other leg, and in an instant, they were in the stone room. Han Yunshi had to admit that it was faster to let him carry her. Although she could use Qinggong, she did not dare to use too much force, which affected her speed. Otherwise, she would have rushed over as soon as she detected the poison. As soon as Long Fei Yi landed, Han Yunshi hurriedly got down from his leg, afraid that she would hurt him. After all, she was not alone now. She was also carrying the weight of a child. In the stone room, Gu Beiwei and Tang Li were looking at a mezzanine on the wall. "What's going on?" Long Fei Yi walked over. "There's a secret room inside." Tang Li's eyes were obviously disappointed, but he did not give up. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunshi walked closer and found that there was a hole at the bottom right of the mezzanine that could only accommodate one person. From the looks of it, when Bai Yanqing was fighting with them, Ning Jing had already been taken away by his subordinates. "Let's hope the 7th young master can still trap Bai Yanqing," Gu Beiwei said seriously. "I'll go down first and take a look." "No, I'll go down." Tang Li stopped him. Everyone knew he wanted to save Ning Jing personally. However, he could not take the risk in an unknown hole like this. After all, Bai Yanqing and Gu had also fallen into a hole, and the two holes were extremely close to each other. Who knew whether they were connected or not? "It's too dangerous. I'd better go down," Gu Beiwei said seriously. "Stop struggling. There's no poison down there." Bai Yanqing and Gu should have fallen extremely deep, as I can't detect the poison in Gu's body anymore. "North Moon is faster, so let's let North Moon go down," Han Yunshi said. Her casual mention of North Moon added a sense of familiarity and intimacy. No one noticed it, and Han Yunshi was even more unaware. However, Gu Beiwen noticed it. He said nothing. He picked up the lantern on the wall, glanced down, and jumped down. Tang Li still kept an eye out. He inserted a needle and thread into Gu Beiwei's sleeve, just in case he got lost. From the thread in Tang Li's sleeve, The hole should be extremely deep. After quite a while, the thread that was constantly being pulled down finally stopped. It's extremely deep. Long Fei Yi was very surprised. He called out, Gu Beiwei, how's the situation? It should be safe. This is a passageway. You can come down, Gu Beiwei answered loudly. Tang Li jumped down first, while Long Fei Yi, directly pried, opened the rock at the entrance. He carried Han Yunxi, and the two of them jumped down together. At the bottom of the hole was a secret passageway that was wide enough for one person to pass through. It was around the height of a person. For someone of Long Fei Yi's height, they would even have to bend over slightly. Moving around here was not convenient at all. In other words, if someone wanted to launch a sneak attack on them right now, it would be extremely easy for them to succeed. Of course, Han Yunxi had always been cautious. Before she came down, she had scattered a ring of poison powder around the entrance. Bai Yanqing could nullify her poison, but the poison masters under Bai Yanqing's command were definitely trash before her poison. Forward, Long Fei Yi pondered. It should be the entrance to the secret room. Long Fei Yi's sense of direction was definitely unmatched. It cannot be wrong. Gu Beiwei smiled. Your Highness, I'm afraid I've gone in the wrong direction. I landed facing the entrance to the stone room. I'm sure of it. Everyone was rather doubtful. Was this secret passageway the same one that Bai Yanqing and Gu had landed in? Let's go. Everyone be careful, Long Fei Yi said seriously. Gu Beiwei walked at the front. The four of them formed a straight line and carefully walked forward. What would they encounter? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.